What's up, my comic comrades? Over the past 2 months, we've been having a blast retelling the DCeased story by Tom Taylor between 4 different episodes, each breaking down one of the 4 major titles in the series. Well, today we're bringing it all together to give you the complete DCeased saga from start to finish in one long-form video. So for those of you who like to listen to complete collected stories like a movie, this is for you, and we hope you enjoy it. Without further ado, we give you our complete retelling of the DCeased saga. The comic opens up with Superman having just broken Darkseid's jaw, and the Justice League defeating Darkseid yet again after a long, grueling battle. Superman says, "You'll leave Earth, Darkseid, now." Batman then says, "You will not return to our world," with Wonder Woman following up saying, "The lasso of truth compels you." Then Darkseid replies, "I will not return. I have no need. For the truth is, I have what I came for," as he tears off Wonder Woman's lasso and throws it to the ground in a mic drop moment while returning to Apokolips. We then learn that Cyborg is missing via Batman, as Batman secretly has a tracker on everyone in the Justice League without them knowing, because Batman. Of course, this raises some concerns with the League, but they didn't have time to get into it with Batman. We are then taken to Apokolips, where we see what Darkseid came to Earth for. It was Cyborg. And one of Darkseid's elite, the sadistic torturer DCeased, has essentially crucified Cyborg to an apocalyptic type torturing table. We then find out the reason for Cyborg's abduction. DCeased tells Cyborg that the almighty Darkseid already has half of the anti-life equation, but the other half had manifested on Earth, which he found. Cyborg asks where, and Darkseid walks in saying, "In you." Long story short, DCeased tells Darkseid Cyborg won't survive the extraction, so he calls upon Death, aka the Black Racer, to essentially prolong Cyborg's death to get the piece of the anti-life equation he needs. But Death corrupted and changed the equation, turning it into something else. Something horrific and deadly. Something that infected Darkseid and made him go crazy, clawing off his freaking face. DCeased then sends the now infected Cyborg back to Earth to try to get rid of the problem, but it was too late. Darkseid starts going crazy and jumps into Apokolips's core, unleashing all of his power, destroying himself and all of Apokolips. After this, we see Cyborg return to Earth, and once he does, his system was automatically online, and the anti-life equation leaped from him, patient zero, to the internet. Cyborg tried to firewall himself, cutting himself off from the world, but it was too late and the damage was done. And this is where we get an explanation of what exactly is going on. We learn that the anti-life equation began to spread as a techno-organic virus that attacked through social media as a disease that bridged the digital divide to the biological and infected the minds of all who saw it. And once infected, they would mindlessly share messages and tweet the equation, spreading it even more. The equation made people desperate and scared, so they tried to tear the equation from their heads, which is why everyone infected starts clawing off their faces before they're eventually enslaved by the equation. Meanwhile, Superman is talking to Mr. Miracle and Big Barda at their home, but having super hearing, he hears screaming from the city. So he flies off to see what's going on, only to find out the world is tearing itself apart. So of course, he immediately flies home to his apartment to warn Lois and John of this techno-organic virus. We are then thrown to Batman in his Batcave, who of course has the virus quarantined and all of his firewalls in place on his Bat computers, because again, Batman. He then runs diagnostics on how many people are infected, and we find out it's 600 million worldwide, and that at the current rapid rate, the virus will spread to almost every internet-connected device within days, infecting billions. Batman then realizes the internet connection hasn't been disabled in his mansion, only the Batcave. So when he goes to check on Alfred, he sees that Nightwing has been infected and is trying to tear Alfred and Bruce apart. But it gets worse, because he also sees that Tim Drake has been infected and he tears a chunk out of Batman's arm. But it gets even crazier than that, because the final page of the comic shows Nightwing biting a piece of Batman's neck off. The second issue then picks up with Aquaman discovering an empty cargo ship in the North Atlantic Ocean. But he soon finds out the ship isn't empty and is infested with infected people who start attacking him, pushing him overboard into the water. We then see Metropolis on fire as Damian Wayne and Jonathan Kent look from a distance, and we also find out that Superman needs to go to Smallville to check on his parents. But Lois wants to go to the Daily Planet first. Then we get a scene where Harley is getting a pep talk from Ivy before she goes in to break up with the Joker. But when Harley goes in to dump Mr. J, we find out, before he turns around, that he's infected too. The comic then jumps to outside of Metropolis, where we see Black Canary, Green Arrow, and Hal Jordan Green Lantern camping. Anyway, we find out that Hal Jordan hates camping, so he ends up turning in early, going to his tent where he looks at his phone. And we know what that leads to. He becomes infected, blows up his tent with his ring, and starts attacking Green Arrow and Black Canary. So much so, it forces Black Canary's hand to use such an intense canary cry against him that it kills him in the process. Oliver is like, "What did you do?" Then the Green Lantern ring says, "Green Lantern of Sector 2814, deceased. Scanning for replacement. Replacement found. Diana Lance of Earth, you have the ability to overcome great fear. welcome to the Green Lantern Corps. But skipping some stuff here and there, we are eventually brought back to Batman in the Batcave, who had put on one of Mr. Freeze's old suits to slow down his metabolism, which in turn slows down the spread of the virus within him. He then tells Superman, even though I slowed it down, the infection is soon gonna take over. He goes on to tell Superman, there's literally no time for sentiment, Clark. It's a technological biological hybrid that can be transferred through blood and through digital imagery. To save the world, you're gonna have to destroy any human carriers, and you're gonna have to take down the internet. After this, Batman goes on to tell his son Damian that he left something for him with Alfred, which is a briefcase that has the bat symbol on it, which we could only assume is a bat suit, having his son carry on his mantle. And right as Bruce is starting to give a sentimental speech to his son, he starts changing, clawing at his face, tearing off his helmet from the free suit. He then turns around to start attacking Alfred, but Alfred, who's been holding a shotgun this whole time, knowing what's inevitably gonna happen, says, "Computer, cease transmission," so Damian didn't have to hear what was about to happen. Alfred then says, "It shouldn't have ended this way. Not for you. I'm sorry, son." And then bang! Alfred kills Bruce. Are you a fan of tabletop gaming? I am, and today's sponsor, Simon, has it covered with their awesome new game, DC Superheroes United. We've been raving about DC Superheroes United all month as they just launched their crowdfunding campaign on GameFound, and again, you just gotta check it out. Simon is like the king of board game crowdfunding, having raised over 110 million, bringing us some of the biggest fan favorite games, while in their latest game, DC Superheroes United, the greatest heroes in the DC universe unite to take on our favorite villains in this fast-paced, family-friendly cooperative game with really dope figures. And as we've said in the past, this game is perfect for 1 to 4 players, with each player controlling one DC superhero. And with each of these cool miniatures, they're designed so you could either leave them in their classic one-color design or hand paint them however you want. Overall, the game has simple rules, easy setup, and quick playtime, which keeps the gameplay fast-paced and fun. And by backing DC Superheroes United on GameFound, you can score exclusive playable heroes and villains, which won't be available if you buy it at retail later on. So visit simon.co/variant to back the campaign on GameFound today, or just click the link in our description to jump in on DC Superheroes United. And issue 3 gets even more gut-wrenching, as it literally opens up with Alfred looking at Dick Grayson, Tim Drake's, and Bruce's dead bloody bodies, with him saying, "My boys, I'm sorry, I couldn't save you." So Alfred hops into the Batwing with a briefcase Bruce gave him to give to Damian, and on the way to Damian starts mowing down infected zombie people to let out some anger and frustration. Alfred's a freaking boss. We are then thrown back to Harley and the Joker, where we see Joker attacking her, but she quickly gets a hold of the situation by killing him with a shotgun blast to the stomach. Unfortunately, after this, zombie birds of prey show up and start attacking her, but she just says, "I guess we're bird hunting." Gotta love Harley. We are then shown that Aquaman is infected from being attacked in the previous issue and is now going after Atlantis. Jumping forward again, we see that Superman finally arrives home in Smallville to check on his parents. He quickly sees his mother and says, "Ma, where's Pa?" She tells him Jonathan's inside. "I hit him, Clark. He fell." Letting us already know, Soup's dad is infected. We then see Superman walking slowly inside the barn, where his dad is locked in an underground basement, so Superman breaks the locks and opens the door to reveal his zombie-infected father running out, starting to attack him. Superman, being Superman, easily but sadly just dodges and deflects his dad's attacks and catches his father's arms like it was nothing, slowly and sadly walking his dad down into the basement and then closing the door. Once the door is closed, he uses his heat vision to blast a beam through the door and kill his father. Then when he walks out of the barn, his mom looks at him like, "What happened?" while saying, "Clark?" But he just said, "It's time to go." And she says, "We can't just leave. This is our home. Your father." And he replies, "He isn't here, Ma. He isn't here." Talk about another gut-wrenching moment. Just completely nuts. Not only was Alfred forced to kill Bruce, having a father kill his son, in the next issue, Superman is forced to kill Jonathan, having a son kill his father. Issue 4 opens up with Amanda Waller and Captain Atom in Cadmus deep underground, waiting on Ray Palmer, aka the Atom. Palmer has shrunken down and went into someone who's infected to see if he could somehow reverse engineer and or stop the virus from spreading. And while they're waiting for him, it's taking Palmer longer than expected. And Waller's like, "We can't wait for him any longer. Plague Protocol C has been ordered." And we find out that Protocol C is having Captain Atom go to the most affected areas and eradicate all life down to the very last atom, killing the infection. He doesn't want to, but he does, and starts destroying those infected areas. If you're not aware, Captain Atom is essentially a living weapon. He's literally fueled by the quantum field. Anyway, while eradicating the infection, we see there's a problem with Captain Atom. Apparently, when Ray Palmer went inside of that infected woman, he too became infected, which is why he never came out of that woman, and instead somehow found a way to microscopically get inside of Captain Atom and seize the heart of a living weapon. After this, we see Superman arrive back in Metropolis with his mom, breaking the news to Lois and John that his father is gone. We also see that the other heroes like Black Canary, Green Lantern, Green Arrow, and so on are on top of the Daily Planet still trying to get radio comms up so they could send a message to anyone out there who still isn't infected. And while they're doing this, Superman says, I need to leave again. I need to get back out there and help people. Then Black Canary says, we can't have you back out there. You're too great a threat if you were to be turned by seeing a screen. Superman replies, I won't. And Canary's like, how could you possibly know that? And Superman says, because I've been using my X-ray vision from the nanosecond I worked out what was causing this. And that is one of the many reasons why Superman is a boss. After this, Lois and gang get the radio comms up and send a message out to the world saying, to all the uninfected, you are not alone. We are regrouping. The Justice League is gathering in Metropolis. Anyone with the power and means to get here, please get to the Daily Planet roof, if it is safe and you are capable of doing so. After this, Superman and Black Canary, Green Lantern go out looking for anyone they could help. And wouldn't you know it, they spot Flash and Kid Flash. Flash says, Bruce contacted us. We had to hide away from the world. Not very heroic, but if either one of us were to be infected, it would spell disaster. But Superman says, I can move you safely. We then get a pretty epic panel of Harley Quinn being attacked by Catwoman, Huntress, Batgirl, and Batwoman. And she's holding them off with a shotgun until Poison Ivy steps in and crushes them into a bloody mess with her vines. We are then taken back to the rooftop of the Daily Planet, where Lois, Superboy, Robin, Green Arrow, and the others are hearing some pretty loud noises. And we see that it's an infected Giganta. And then Black Lightning says, that's a really big zombie. So they all start fighting her off, but out of nowhere, the Batwing shows up and starts firing missiles at her. After a few shots, she's able to punch it out of the air, but then Superman, Flash, Kid Flash, and Black Canary arrive just in time, with Canary catching the Batwing with a Green Lantern construct. Superman then knocks Giganta out by flying right into her face, after which Cyborg uses his arm cannon to blow a hole right through her head, killing her once and for all. Superman's like, Cyborg, what have you done? Cyborg explains, she wasn't alive. None of them are. We need to talk. After this, Damian runs towards what's left of the Batwing, yelling, Father! But Alfred gets out just saying, Damian, I'm sorry, son. He said you were worthy of it, that he was proud of you, and that he should have told you that every day, as he gives Damian the Batsuit. After this, Cyborg better explains to the heroes what exactly is going on, saying they're not zombies, they're a blight. An extension of the anti-life equation. The blighted ones want to spread death, nothing more. As he's explaining all this, the heroes see Hawkgirl fall out of the sky, but Wonder Woman catches her saying, what happened? And Hawkgirl replies, Captain Atom. He's turned, he's going to blow. And Superman says, where? So Wonder Woman and Superman head to DC. But when they get there, it's too late. As the comic says, it was the most destructive explosion ever unleashed on the world. It was heard and felt across the planet. Washington was gone in an instant, and the blast kept growing. Baltimore crumbled, and finally, Metropolis did too. Okay, so that closes out issue 4, which is where the tie-in story, A Good Day to Die, comes in. The issue starts off with Big Barda and Mr. Miracle boom-tubing into Apocalypse as it's exploding, with Big Barda telling Mr. Miracle, it's true, Apocalypse, the whole damn planet. Mr. Miracle replies, God is dead, as the caption says, A Good Day to Die. Scott, aka Mr. Miracle, then tells Barda, Darkseid, the all-knowing, and he didn't know what he was doing? My father is gone, referring to his evil adopted father, Darkseid. Barda then asks, how do you feel? He replies, honestly, pretty good. And with that, she kisses him and then says, come on, we need to go back. We have to face what God unleashed on Earth. Back on Earth, we see Mr. Terrific has strapped an infected Captain Boomerang to his table in his lab, where he's performing tests on him to see what the heck this virus is doing and how it works. Mr. Terrific proceeds to voice record his findings, saying, no noticeable change after secondary exposure to the virus. Deep analysis of the virus code shows no obvious flaws, and I'm hesitant to attempt any change for fear of corruption. I have 14 PhDs and I'm stumped. At which point one of his devices start beeping and he says, they're back. We go to the origin as he flies out of his lab. Meanwhile, elsewhere in an apartment building, we see Mr. Miracle and Barda staring at their apartment door as someone's knocking on it. They then stare at each other for a second before Barda goes to open the door. But Scott's like, whoa, what are you doing, while grabbing her hand, stopping her. She then answers him saying, getting the door? He then says, how do you know it's not monsters? As they hear someone knock again. She then looks at him saying, I don't think the undead knock that politely. He then just looks at her annoyed saying, you don't know that's a knock. It might just sound like a knock. It could be a bloody stump smacking against the, and before he finishes his sentence, the doorbell rings. Barda then just looks at him saying, the bloody stump found the doorbell. At which point he looks at her pissed off saying, answer the door. When they open the door, we see it's Mr. Terrific. And Barda asks him, what are you doing here? He replies, I was tracking the planet for apocalyptic technology and got a spike. As he sits down, Scott comes to offer him a veggie plate. And Barda tells Mr. Terrific, Scott thought you were a bloody stump. Mr. Terrific starts to tell them, I've investigated the virus. It's apocalyptic at its core. Barda tells him, you've seen it? I thought that's how the infection was spreading. He answers her, the T-mask protected me from the virus. Scott then jumps in saying, did you know it would do that? He answers, no. Scott then says, you're one of the smartest people in the world and you just got lucky? Mr. Terrific then tells him, yes. At this point, Mr. Terrific says, I was hoping you could take me to Apocalypse. If I could find exactly where this originated from, maybe I can. And Barda interrupts him saying, Apocalypse is gone. The whole planet is destroyed. Terrific then says, I see. Then we move on to other plans to other destinations. As the comic takes us to Cord Industries. Inside, we see Booster Gold and Blue Beetle saying, the undead are right outside the door. And after they say this, the door blows open only for them to see Barda, Mr. Miracle, and Mr. Terrific fighting off the undead. Booster Gold then asks, you guys want some help? As we see Mr. Terrific's T-spheres flying through a bunch of undead, turning them into zombie Swiss cheese. Then on the next page, Barda says, no, I'd say we're good, as they destroyed all of the undead. Blue Beetle then says, it's good to see you, Barda. She replies, you too. I'd give you a hug, but I'm covered in a lot of undead bits. Mr. Miracle then jumps in saying, I have part of an ear in my tights. Booster Gold asks, what do you need? Barda answers, first, we need a shower. Then Mr. Terrific says, then we need to save the world. To do that, we need to think outside the box. Then on the next page, we see all of them are now on Blue Beetle's ship, the Blue Bug, flying over armies of the undead, while saying, it really is the end of the world, isn't it? Mr. Terrific answers, I'm hoping we still have a say in that, as they head to England. Booster Gold then asks, why not go to the Justice League? Terrific tells them the Justice League is a powder keg. Do you really want to be nearby the anti-life equation if it gains the power of Wonder Woman? He continues to say the origin of the virus is gone. Our next option is magic. Blue Beetle speaks up saying, magic is so unreliable. Terrific tells them there's a third option, but it could go very badly. Blue Beetle asks, how badly? Terrific answers saying, I prefer not to think about that yet. I don't want to risk all of time and space to see if it saves humanity. Then on the next page, we're taken to Liverpool, where we see John Constantine running from an army of the undead in the city streets while yelling and cursing. It's actually hilarious. Then after this, we see he finally makes his way to his best friend and sidekick, Chase, as he tries to get into his taxi saying, Chase, start the car. Start the bloody, but as he looks in the front seat, he sees his best friend has been infected, and said friend then starts attacking Constantine. Constantine saddened says, oh mate, I'm so sorry, as he says a spell that sets his friend on fire. With no time to mourn, Constantine jumps in the front seat and floors it to get away from the horde, but he crashes into another car saying, why didn't I ever learn how to drive? But remember, earlier we found out that Mr. Terrific and gang are headed to England, and that would be Liverpool, England, to find John Constantine. So of course they eventually show up to help Constantine, and John says, oh, look at this, 2 misters and a big. Why can't you people get regular names? I mean, Mr. Terrific, what kind of arrogant sod is comfortable walking around with that hanging around him? Why not just call yourself Mr. Full of Me Bloody Self and be done with it? After his little rant, Mr. Miracle asks, are you okay? And as Constantine gets out of the car, he says, Peachy, just set my best mate on fire and crashed his car while sitting on his ashes. How's your day going? Mr. Miracle replies, my entire planet was destroyed. John, while sitting on the hood of the car, says, all right, it's not a competition. John then asks Mr. Terrific, how the heck did you find me? He answers, you have a Justice League membership in your wallet. It has a transponder inside of it. John goes, it has what? I thought it was like a library card. Terrific then says, John, I can't find a technological fix for this. I was hoping there could be a magic one. John answers, you think I could click my fingers and make all this go away? No, I already tried. This is beyond magic. This is find somewhere well stocked and enjoy what's left time. Terrific then asks, you're not gonna help? John tells him, I'm gonna hide and get so irresponsibly drunk I could barely feel anything. Care to join me? Terrific tells him, we have to save the world. John then says, right, off you pop and do that then. Before Barda, Mr. Miracle, and Terrific leave, Terrific tells John, if you change your mind, you know where to find us. And John says, I won't. Then back on Blue Beetle's ship, Mr. Terrific says, it's time for that plan that risks all of time and space. He then asks, Booster, you have a time machine, right? He answers, kind of. I stole a time machine. Terrific asks, can you operate it? And Booster tells him, yes. So with that, they then head off to find it in Malibu, the home of fire and ice. But as they arrive, an infected fire causes Blue Beetle's ship to crash. So of course the heroes get out, and when they do, Big Barda tells Booster Gold and Blue Beetle to get to the house. Scott and I will hold them off. As of course there's a horde of undead inside. Blue Beetle then asks, are you sure? Barda yells, go, as Mr. Miracle starts laying out the undead. But on the next page, we see that fire and ice and the army of the undead are starting to overwhelm Barda and Mr. Miracle. Miracle even falls, but Barda catches him and tells her, but if I could turn back time, if we could find a way. She then cuts him off saying, are your last words really gonna be quoting Cher? As he grabs her face saying, I like her, as both of them get overrun with the undead. Meanwhile, Booster Gold, Blue Beetle, and Mr. Terrific continue to make their way to the time machine. And when they get there, a voice says, Michael Carter. And Booster Gold then says, oh no. We then see that this voice is Wave Rider, who says, you will not be permitted to change time. Booster Gold then tells Blue Beetle he's a master of time, and we're not getting past him. Meanwhile, in a pocket dimension at the Oblivion Bar, which is only accessible to powerful magic users, we see John Constantine about to get incredibly drunk. But before he starts drinking, he's just staring at the bottle, saying, bollocks, as he gets up and leaves. The bartender then asks, "Where are you going?" And he says, "To be a damn hero." Meanwhile, back on Earth, Wave Rider tells Booster Gold he's arrested and the time machine is going to be confiscated. But right after that, John Constantine shows up saying, "Take a good look, Sparkleface. Now watch the hand closely." This is called misdirection, as he headbutts Wave Rider. Mr. Terrific then says, "I knew you'd come," and Constantine tells him, "Of course you did, Smarty Pants. Now do what you gotta do. I'll hold off shiny hair here." Right after he finishes his sentence, an infected Big Barda comes crashing through the wall, attacking Constantine. But Mr. Terrific jumps in, kicking her off. Unfortunately for him, saving Constantine means sacrificing himself, as she proceeds to literally rip Mr. Terrific in two, throwing his upper torso aside as John Constantine yells, "Bloody hell." After this, Booster Gold tries to use the time machine, but he can't walk. He's becoming too weak. Blue Beetle asks, "Wave Rider, what's happening?" He tells them the end. Kal-El of Krypton has found Barry Allen on Earth, in the rubble of Keystone City. Booster Gold then tells Blue Beetle, I think we just lost the future. I don't think I was ever born." As Blue Beetle tries to help his friend, Booster just fades away into nothing. After this, things continue to go to hell as Big Barda infects Blue Beetle, and we see John Constantine use a magic spell to keep Wave Rider from running, which causes Blue Beetle to then slash Wave Rider's head off as an endless amount of undead start coming after John. But he's saved when Dr. Fate and Zatanna show up, with Fate saying, "It's not your time. Another fate awaits you." John answers saying, "Another? Oh, you wanker," as he punched Fate's helmet, hurting his hand. Fate tells John, "Brute force cannot harm the helm. Also, it's made of metal, so you know, punching it is a bad idea to start with." John then says, "I get a last-second rescue, but actual heroes have to die." Dr. Fate tells John, "I'm sorry, this was their fate." John says, "Oh, shut it. I'm not a big believer in destiny, mate. Takes all the human out of it." Fate proceeds to tell John, "The world is ending, John Constantine. We must prepare for what's coming next." The Lords of Order and Chaos, but John interrupts saying, "Can eat a giant bag of bullocks. The world isn't over until I say it is." And with that, the comic ends. This was an awesome tie-in and a great setup for the events in the Dead Planet series. In the meantime, let's continue the original series with issue 5. The comic opens up with Superman and Wonder Woman just hovering in the sky, looking at the destruction. We then see a narration say, "Superman, Wonder Woman, they've protected us so many times before, no matter how dark the day was. We saw them and knew hope. But they couldn't protect us from this." 3 cities were completely wiped out: Washington, Baltimore, and Metropolis. Millions of people were gone in an instant. But Black Canary Green Lantern was able to put a bubble around the roof of the Daily Planet, saving the few on top. Down below on the ground, Superman spots Lex Luthor, who wants to call a truce, saying, "I'm not here to fight you, Superman. I'm not here to add to..." And then Lex drops to his knees in despair, saying, Look what happened to our city." It's definitely a side of Lex we don't see much. We then see that over the next several days, the Justice League took down the internet. Every major server in every country, every mass digital broadcasting device, everything we relied on was severed, so the only way for the virus to spread was through people. And if you haven't noticed yet, this story is definitely an allegory for how much we rely on tech and how it affects society. Anyway, after this, Wonder Woman convinces her people on Themyscira to let everyone use it as a sanctuary. So Superman, Wonder Woman, and Mira lifted sections of the seafloor and added to the landmass of Themyscira for the refugees of the world. We're then taken to Gotham, where it grew into a jungle in a week, and nothing penetrated its thorn-filled walls, obviously meaning it was protected by poison ivy. So Damian, now the new Batman, Black Canary, and Green Arrow go there to convince Ivy to take in some refugees. She doesn't want to at first, but Harley is able to convince her to do it. Then back at the Fortress of Solitude, we see that Cyborg and Luthor were able to engineer closed communications, making the Fortress of Solitude a information hub, as well as a new hall for heroes. We find out that Cyborg and Lex Luthor have developed arcs that will fit 7 million people. But Superman's like, "We're not leaving Earth." To which Luthor says, "Superman, I'm the most intelligent person on the planet." And then pauses and says, "Wait, is Batman dead?" Cyborg says yes, and Lex goes on to say, "Right. Then I'm the most intelligent person on the planet, and I'm telling you, the world is over." Lex goes on to say, "It's inevitable. If the human race is to survive, it has to leave Earth." And Superman says, "We're not abandoning this planet, we're fighting for it." Lex just says, "Losing 2 home worlds in 1 lifetime. How careless," which pushes Lois to give him a right hook straight to the nose. Meanwhile, we see that the Justice League is starting to build the arcs, which pretty much just look like gigantic space blimps. But inside the Fortress of Solitude, all the heroes start hearing a loud buzz that turned into a scream in their minds. And all of a sudden, an infected Martian Manhunter comes out of nowhere, ripping Lex Luthor in half and taking a chunk out of the Flash's hip. As the heroes are trying to fight him off, Firestorm tells everyone to move and fries Martian Manhunter, as his weakness is fire. But as he's lying there all burnt, the heroes notice that the Flash is gone, and Superman uses his vision to see that he's running. Kid Flash says, "I'll get him," and Superman says no. If you turn too, Wally, that could be bad. So Superman says, I'll go. Then Green Arrow's like, do you honestly think you can catch him? And Superman says, no, but I don't have to catch him. I can come from around the other side and meet him head on. Before he does so, he confirms with Cyborg that Flash is dead, since he's infected. And once he does, he meets the Flash head on and literally blows right through him, causing the Flash to explode into 100 pieces. It's all kinds of gory. But there's just one problem. When flying through the Flash, two of Flash's fingers stabbed Superman in the side as they collided at over the speed of light. Meaning Superman is now infected. How freaking crazy is that? Everybody's dying. But since Superman is Superman, the infection will take longer to spread with him. So with his remaining time, he says bye to Lois, his mother, and his son, as he knows he has to fly away as far as possible because once he's turned, he will be the world's greatest threat. And after those emotional goodbyes, Superman flies as far as he can to starve himself of oxygen before the virus could spread. And then on the last panel of the last page, we see him starting to turn with a caption saying, and any hope our world had was gone with him. And this, my friends, brings us to the 6th and final issue of the series. The very first panel of the first issue shows us a bloody Superman flying down to Earth with a caption saying, faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. But Clark had a much greater power. Every single person who saw him was filled with hope. But all hope was lost on this day, as he flies straight down through the middle of the building, destroying it. Because now the beacon of hope is infected and bloodthirsty. Back at the Fortress of Solitude, Cyborg tells the heroes who are still not infected that if Superman is turned, that's it. It's over. The arcs are ready. We need to leave Earth. Now. Then Wonder Woman says, no, we need to take him on. And Black Lightning asks, how? And Damian says, with this. Bruce left him with a contingency takedown plan for every major hero. After this, there's a really funny beat with Green Arrow where he's offended that Bruce didn't leave a takedown plan for him. Canary's like, you're hurt that Batman didn't leave a post-mortem Machiavellian plan to end you? To which he says, well, yeah, I could be a planetary level threat if I wanted to. It's a really funny moment, one that keeps playing out through the book. We then find out that Bruce left Damian schematics on how to turn the kryptonite in his utility belt into a suppressing gas to slow down Superman. Wonder Woman's like, that's not enough. Bruce was a lot of things, but he was never lethal. It was admirable. She tells Cyborg and the others, Clark is vulnerable to kryptonite and magic. Years ago, my mother and I hypothesized we can join the two. So she takes the magical sword of Athena, the goddess of war, and infuses it with kryptonite. Meanwhile, the rest of the heroes and villains are getting as many people as they can on the arcs to get them away from Earth. But of course, nothing ever goes smoothly. And off the shores of Themyscira, a zombified Aquaman burst out of the water on top of the freaking Kraken, along with an army of infected Atlanteans attacking Mera and the Amazons and everyone else who's on Paradise Island. And not shortly after, we see an arrow go right through Aquaman's head. And we see a panel of Green Arrow saying, and Batman didn't think I could be dangerous. I just fired an arrow half a mile through raging winds into the brain of the undead king of the sea, while he was controlling the damn Kraken. But this doesn't stop an all-out war from happening between the living dead Atlanteans and the Amazons of Themyscira. Then we are thrown to the other side of the world, where Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, and Cyborg are about to face off against Superman. Black Canary tries to hold him off by using a mixture of her canary cry and a Green Lantern construct of a megaphone. But that doesn't work for long, so Cyborg comes in for the assist, when ultimately Wonder Woman comes out of nowhere and cuts Superman's arm right off, and then stabs him right through the chest. But we just see that this pisses off zombie-infected Superman, and he punches a hole straight through her stomach. Cyborg then catches her and tells Canary that the virus started with him, and that he was never going to go on the Ark, so he's staying with Wonder Woman. Back on the two Arks, which are now in space with millions of refugees, Superboy tells Damian that he's the only one who could stand against his father now, and even tells his mom, it's okay, I know what I have to do, as we get the iconic close-up of the S on his chest. Superboy leaves the Ark and ends up colliding head-on with his father, momentarily stunning the two, and just as Black Canary Green Lantern shows up to help, so does the entire Green Lantern Corps, which all I have to say is, it's about freaking time. Superman then looks at what seems to be an endless amount of Green Lanterns and decides it's not worth facing them and flies away. But the Guardians and the Green Lantern Corps chase him down. We find out that Superman retreated because he couldn't stand against the entire Green Lantern Corps, so he calculated another way to kill. And what's that way, you ask? Well, that would be him flying into the center of the sun, absorbing all of it, draining the sun itself. You know, the same sun that makes Superman Superman in the first place. We find this out when one of the Guardians say he's draining the entirety of the sun, so that once he does this, the solar system will grow cold and die. Canary's like, and we're just gonna let him do that? To which the Guardian says, even Green Lantern's light isn't powerful enough to reach into the heart of a star. Perhaps it's for the best. We cannot wipe out the virus directly. We cannot risk exposure. But if the system freezes, the virus will sleep. We will monitor the sun and your world, but it's time to move the survivors. Back on Earth, Cyborg puts the lasso of truth around Wonder Woman, saying the lasso of truth compels you. Can you speak? Wonder Woman replies, we have a voice. So Cyborg asks, is there a way to stop you? Are you a virus? Is there a cure? She replies, yes. And we find out the cure is Cyborg himself. Infected Wonder Woman says, you are man and machine. You are binary, off and on, patient zero, the alpha and the omega. So as he's about to tell the others on the Ark this revelation, she literally twists off his head and throws it in a canyon. After this, we are brought back to space where the Green Lantern Corps is escorting the Arks to find their new home. And the issue ends with Earth's heroes being shown their brand new Earth. Their Earth 2. From here, we jump to the villain side of the story with Unkillables #1. The issue starts off in Kentucky, day 1 of the anti-life virus, and gives Deathstroke's perspective on things. We learn that he was paid $9 million to go there and kill the bastards who set fire to a few churches. So Deathstroke rings the doorbell where these men are hiding, and as he does so, someone jumps out of the 3rd floor window, and when the dude lands, gets back up and starts running on his shattered leg. So Deathstroke put a bullet through his head, while thinking to himself, I haven't seen a lot of people keep trying to run on broken legs. Right after this, the front door slams open and a bunch of men come running out. So Deathstroke goes inside to see what the heck is going on. And when he does so, he's confronted by a bunch of zombie Nazis. So Deathstroke does what he does best, and that is kill lots of people until his phone rings, and when he grabs it and picks it up, he gets infected with the anti-life technovirus. As the virus is transferred by looking at any screen linked to the internet, hence technovirus, or the obvious scratch or bite. So Slade starts clawing his face apart, as that's what the virus makes you do. And then the comic says, and that was the end of his story. At least it should have been, but Slade was different, very different. The comic then jumps to day 2 of the anti-life virus, where we see Slade is now healed. We are then taken to Wayne Manor, still on day 2 of the anti-life virus, where we see Red Hood is walking into the Batcave looking for Bruce and Alfred. So he starts yelling, Bruce, Alfred, it's Jason. Is anyone? As he steps in a puddle of blood. At which point he looks up and says, oh no, as he sees the dead bodies of Bruce, Dick, and Damian. Needless to say, it hits Jason extremely hard, with him saying, I thought you of all people, as he starts crying. He then hears growling, at which point he turns around and points his guns in that direction. But it's just Ace, who is also extremely upset to lose Bruce, Dick, and Damian. So Jason says, don't worry, we're not gonna leave them like this. It's okay. So he goes to get a shovel and wood to dig graves and make tombstones. He then buried his father and brothers because let's face it, that's what Bruce and his fellow Robins really were. Jason looks at the Batmobile and says, you never did let me drive the car. So he hops in and says, car, show me the locations of all the Bat family in Gotham other than me. The Bat computer then says 8 located in Gotham. Jason then asks how many with heartbeats. The computer replies 2, which again is another punch to the gut for Jason. As Jason peels away in the Batmobile with Ace, we get a panel of the tombstone that he made for Batman, which says Bruce Wayne, father, mentor, bastard, Batman. We are then taken to Rose Wilson, aka Ravenger, aka Deathstroke's daughter, where we see that she's hiding in her apartment building and everyone on the ground floor is infected. She's hiding in her apartment because she's a precog and is having visions of opening the door, at which point a bunch of zombies come in and tear her apart. But her father is talking to her on a walkie saying, take the fire escape to the top floor, get to the roof, bring every weapon you can carry, to which Rose says, but I'll be stuck on the roof. And Slade says, you won't be stuck. Go. So she suits up and goes to the roof and sees a ladder hanging from a helicopter that her dad's flying. But out of nowhere, Man-Bat comes flying through the cockpit windshield, biting Slade in the arm, which causes the helicopter to crash on the roof, all while Rose looks on. And when Slade gets out of the wreckage, Rose says, I'm sorry, Dad, and stabs him through the chest, to which he says, ow. It's here we find out that his healing factor reverses whatever the hell the virus is. Moments after this, Mirror Master shows up near some broken glass and is like, don't shoot, it's 7 years bad luck. And frankly, I don't want to see what bad luck looks like on top of an undead apocalypse. He then goes on to say, Vandal Savage sent me to find you with an offer. I could probably extend it to your daughter as well. So of course, they ultimately follow him. Mirror Master then takes them to a secret island off the coast somewhere where they meet up with Savage, Solomon Grundy, the Creeper, Cheetah, Captain Cold, Lady Shiva, Bane, and Deadshot. Savage then tells Deathstroke everyone here has been selected for a reason. Like Creeper can heal and survive almost anything. I suspect he can purge the virus from his system. The heroes are going to fail. They are not ruthless enough to survive. I am over 50,000 years old. This is not the first extinction event I have faced. We're going to inherit whatever is left on the planet when this is done. We are then taken back to Gotham where Cassandra Cain, Batgirl, James Gordon, and Bullock are holding off a crap ton of the infected. But before they can lock themselves in a cell block, Harvey gets scratched on the face and infected. As he starts to turn, Cassandra Cain breaks his neck, putting him out of his misery. In any case, at this moment, Jason Todd breaks through the wall with the Batmobile, and Gordon says, "Batman," and Jason says, "No, not Batman. Get in the car." He then tells Gordon and Cassandra that his plan is to get the hell out of Gotham. Gordon's like, "My daughter's out there." Jason says, "No, Jim, I'm sorry, she isn't." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" Jason then says, "Car, show heart monitor for Barbara Gordon." At which point they all just see a flat line on the car's monitor. Gordon's like, "What is this? Why do you have a monitor on my daughter?" Jason then takes off his helmet and Cassandra takes off her cowl and reveal to Gordon who they really are. At which point Gordon starts putting all the pieces together. Jason then tells Gordon and Cassandra we're the only three left in Gotham. Gordon asks, why am I being monitored? Jason answers saying Batman was terrible at expressing anything with words and had absolutely no consideration for personal boundaries, but he violated your trust and secretly monitored you for a reason. Bruce thought of you as family, Jim. Jim then says, but the equipment could be wrong. Take me to my daughter's location. So Jason does, and Jim is forced to look at the truth. His daughter is dead. In any case, Jason finds Joker's dead body alongside Batgirl's and the rest of the birds of prey and says, it should have been me. I should have been the one to kill him. Cassandra then says, move, it's not safe. Jason replies, one thing first, and we see on the next panel that he straps the Joker's corpse to the front of the Batmobile, to which Gordon says, seriously, this is really messed up. And Jason says, it's an apocalypse, don't judge me. Red Hood and the gang then head to Bloodhaven where we see that everyone is also infected. There, Jason says, it's Bloodhaven, so an undead virus is almost an improvement. In any case, they see there's orphans trapped inside of an orphanage. So of course, Jason uses the Batmobile, Joker hood ornament and all, to bust through the horde of the infected and into the orphanage. All three of them get out the car and say, it's all right, we are the good guys. Gordon then says to Jason, you want to remove the corpse of the psychotic clown from the hood of the car? And Jason just replies, yeah. After this, Jim introduces himself to the kids saying, my name is Jim, I'm a policeman. These two are superheroes, Batgirl and Robin. But Jason doesn't take too well to being called Robin. Jason then sees metal bars bent around two door handles holding the horde back from the children and asks who did this. And the little girl says she reinforced it, then she went away and never came back. And another kid says, are you gonna go away too? Jason replies, we'll get you through this. Orphans have to stick together. And the comic ends. And at the beginning of issue 2, we learn that 3 weeks have passed and they've started to grow comfortable and complacent. But Jason tells Gordon, we need to do something. It's time to talk about the undead elephant in the room. Gordon replies, they're no threat to us while they're locked in there. He follows that up by saying, what do you propose we do, Jason? Do you want to open the doors and just blaze away? Can you really do that? They're caregivers and children. At this point, Cassandra Cain tells both of them, the radio. They then hear Lois Lane on the radio telling anyone who could hear them that there's 2 sanctuaries for the non-infected, the island of Themyscira and Poison Ivy's jungle in Gotham. Lois Lane also says her and several heroes are leaving Earth within 2 hours and they invite anyone who can join them. Anyway, Jason and Cassandra say, Gordon, a jungle in Gotham, we could make it. He replies, we might be able to, but there's no way the 3 of us can safely get all those children to another city. So no, we stay here, we defend, and say nothing. We don't tell them their heroes are leaving them behind. We are then taken to Vandal Savage's hideout, where we see Vandal Savage's Unkillables wait out the apocalypse. While here, we see that Lady Shiva asked Mirror Master for his services, which entails him finding and taking her to her daughter, Cassandra Cain. So he does so via a mirror located inside of the orphanage that Cassandra's at. Long story short, she was like, you're coming with me, and Cassandra says, not unless the kids come too. Obviously, Lady Shiva was like, that's not gonna happen, which causes the 2 of them to fight. A fight where Jason Todd comes to help, but quickly gets laid out, as Shiva is one of the top 3 fighters in the DC universe. Anyway, she also lays out her daughter and says, I offered you a chance, because you're family. Goodbye, daughter. We are then taken back to Vandal Savage's island or pyramid, where we see Savage ask Deathstroke to accompany him somewhere privately. Savage then takes him to a room where Solomon Grundy is experimenting on the Creeper, who, by the way, doesn't seem to be affected in the least that his organs are being poked and prodded while Todd tied to an operating table. Anyway, a shocked Slade asks, "What the hell is happening here, Savage?" To which he says, "Grundy, take him," and quickly gets knocked out with a punch to the face by Grundy. Before you know it, Deathstroke is also tied to a table, to which Creeper says, "You got betrayed too, huh?" Gotta say, I didn't see this coming. We learn that since both Creeper and Deathstroke are immune to the anti-life virus, Savage is gonna pull them apart to find out how. But as Savage reveals this, he gets impaled from behind with a sword by none other than Deathstroke's daughter, Ravager. She tells Savage, "Don't try to double-cross someone who could see the future." Then while freeing her dad, she's like, "Oh my god." And Savage says, "What is it? What do you see?" She replies, "I wouldn't want to spoil the surprise." Then moments later, we see an infected Wonder Woman burst through the wall, extremely pissed, staring at Savage before literally ripping him in half right down the middle like he's a piece of string cheese. At this point, all the villains then start firing and attacking Wonder Woman. As this is happening, Mirror Master starts using his powers to get each of them to safety, bringing them to the orphanage in Bloodhaven, while Captain Cold holds Wonder Woman off with his cold gun. Mirror Master promises he'll come back for him, which he does, but when he does, he sees Wonder Woman is still alive, and then gets bitten from behind by a now infected Captain Cold. Back at the orphanage, Gordon yells at Shiva saying, "You brought murderers, psychopaths, and monsters here?" And Jason asks Rose, "What are you doing here?" To which she says, "That's a story probably not for little ears. Let's talk privately." So they all move to the kitchen where Slade explains everything that just happened. You know, Wonder Woman being infected and almost killing every single one of them, forcing them to come here. Jason eventually asks, "So you're planning to stay here?" Bane replies, "That hasn't been discussed." But Rose interjects saying, "It's as good a place as any, and we have a better chance surviving together." But of course, Gordon is not down for teaming up with a bunch of supervillains. And I gotta say, who could blame them? They're killers and villains. Especially Bane, who he has a past with, as he's always trying to destroy his city and kill Batman. And besides all that, Gordon tells Bane and Deathstroke, "Look, we have innocent little kids here. Kids that you now want to use as an army to help fight the zombies. That's not gonna happen under my watch." Deathstroke then asks to speak to Jim privately, and then says, "Who did you lose? Did you lose someone?" Jim replies, "I'm not discussing this with you." Deathstroke then tells Jim, "We're not going to protect these kids or ourselves by pretending the monsters aren't out there. We need to prepare them. This isn't an ideal situation for anyone, but I'm a practical man. I don't want to lead this group, and Bane will step in if you don't." Gordon replies, "You honestly think I'd..." And Deathstroke interrupts saying, "You held the worst city in the country together by sheer force of will." Gordon says, "I can't lead people I don't trust." And Deathstroke finally replies, "You're telling me you think you're the only police commissioner in the world that didn't have dirty cops working for him?" Of course, this finally persuades Gordon to lead this new team of sorts. He then gives a speech and says, "Tonight we get you all set up. Bed sheets, food, and then tomorrow you meet the kids, and we start to prepare." But before they can get to bed, Rose asks, "What the hell is behind these doors?" And Gordon replies, "The ones that didn't make it." Sheeta then says, "You have an entire room full of infected?" Gordon said sadly, "Some of them are children." Bane is like, "None of them are children. They're a virus." Lady Shiva responds, "It would be negligent and stupid to allow this disease to exist within this building." This of course pisses Gordon off, so Deathstroke jumps in saying, "Go to the kid. Make an excuse for the noise. You don't have the stomach for what has to happen. Let us take care of it for you." So Cassandra takes Jim away, while Jason says, "Walk away, Jim. There's work to do." Then Deathstroke, Deadshot, Jason, Bane, Grundy, and Ravager destroy the infected. Over the next several weeks, each of the villains are assigned to teach the kids certain traits. Shiva and Jason Todd had hand-to-hand combat, Deadshot marksmanship, and Creeper taught the kids witty things to say when beheading undead. And lastly, Bane taught the kids why humankind brought the fall of civilization on themselves. And as time goes on, we see the villains develop feelings for the kids. We also see Jason and Rose develop feelings for one another, which Deathstroke, Rose's dad, encourages, saying, "Not a lot of happy out there. Find it where you can. We're probably all gonna die screaming." You know, real encouraging words of wisdom from a father. Anyway, once night falls, Bane hears a noise in the hall saying, "Someone there? If that's a child, you're supposed to be in bed. But I won't tell Gordon if you run right back." Bane then notices that Ace the Bat Hound is growling, freaking out, so he asks, "What's the matter?" And when he does, from behind, a zombie Mirror Master comes out of a mirror, slashing Bane in the back, infecting him. Jason and Rose hear bangs from inside, which interrupts their makeout session, causing them to run in. Once inside, they see Mirror Master trying to rip kids into the mirrors. He almost gets a child, but Deadshot stops him, inevitably causing him to be caught by Mirror Master instead. At which point, Gordon shoots the mirror to stop Mirror Master from being able to enter the building. But Gordon shattering the mirror closes off Mirror Master's portal, which in turn severs Deadshot's legs off. The comic then ends with an infected Bane breaking open the walls of the orphanage, allowing the infected to charge in. Now let's see how this part of the DCeased story wraps up with Unkillables issue 3. The issue starts off directly where issue 2 left off, with a now infected Bane letting hordes of the infected into the orphanage while simultaneously charging the children, Jim Gordon, Deathstroke, and the rest of the non-infected. Gordon then yells "inside" to everyone, with Slade following up with "stay away from the windows and mirrors," because remember from last issue, Mirror Master is now infected and has been teleporting via the mirrors to kill people. And as an infected infected Bane is charging in to tear people apart, a very Grey Hulk-looking Solomon Grundy jumps in to stop him. Because as the comic says, Bane isn't humanly strong. But Solomon Grundy was a whole nother thing. And Grundy proves so by literally grabbing Bane's head and ripping it off with one hand. We're only 2 pages in and Bane already got his head ripped off. This is gonna be fun. Anyway, after this, Grundy proceeds to chuck Bane's decapitated head at the zombie horde, to which Creeper says, "Oh whoa, that's the first headbutt I've seen without a body behind it." Grundy then proceeds to hold off the horde from flooding the orphanage because, well, he's incredibly strong, but also he's dead being a reanimated corpse, so he could handle more than most. Anyway, the orphans, who have now been trained by the villains, are all about taking on the infected horde. But Gordon's like, "Fall back," and Slade says, "Yeah, don't risk your life for a dead man." Gordon tells everyone we have to get to the corridor and then get the kids and everyone on the bus. Rose, aka Ravenger, says, "We'll be sitting ducks out there on the road." "And where are we gonna go?" And Gordon replies, "The Gotham jungle." Red Hood then jumps in saying, "The heroes left, Jim. You honestly think a sanctuary is still there?" Gordon just looks at him and says, "You have another option?" So they all load the buses with the Batmobile leading the charge, breaking out of the orphanage. Also, it's pretty awesome that the school buses are all zombie apocalypse Mad Maxed out with spikes and battering rams in the front of them. They then continue to make the drive to the Gotham jungle, but of course not without some hiccups, because out of nowhere an infected Mirror Master teleports in via a mirror inside one of the buses, slashing Deathstroke in the face with his hand. But remember, Deathstroke is immune to the anti-life virus because of his healing factor. But Deathstroke is not who we're worried about, because seconds later Mirror Master starts coming in through the passenger windows, pulling kids through. Solomon Grundy's all like, "No, take children," and starts smashing the windows, and one of the girls, Letty, follows suit with a baseball bat. And when Mirror Master comes in through another window, once again pulling a girl named Matilda through by the hair, Cheetah moves in so quick, she's able to put her claws straight through Mirror Master's head, killing him and saving the girl. Jason then calls into Bus 1 asking, "Is everyone okay?" Slade responds, "It was Mirror Master. He's down." And Gordon jumps in sadly saying, "But we lost a couple of kids." Anyway, both Rose and Jason are extremely sad about this, and Jason says, "Jim, I'm sorry, but we're almost home. I can see it. I could see the garden, but when they arrive, they're shocked to see a whole lot of undead." Jason then says, "That many blighted ones? There's definitely people alive in the garden." Rose asks, "How are we gonna get in?" Jason's like, "We go through them," and starts running over the infected with the Batmobile. We literally see the bat tires of the Batmobile crushing zombies. An alarm then goes off inside the Batmobile, with Rose asking, "What's that?" And Jason says, "An alarm." She replies, "Maybe it's a good alarm," to which Jason responds, "Batman would never install a good alarm." Jason goes on to say, "It's radar, something low, coming fast." Rose tells him, "Jason, I could see the future. I know it's coming. Seatbelt." Jason then tells Rose a missile isn't even gonna dent this car, and she just yells at him, "Seatbelt." On the next page, we see something huge hit the front end of the Batmobile, destroying it and causing it to flip over. And on the page after that, we see it's an infected Wonder Woman once again, with the caption saying, "Superpower death has come for us." At this point, Wonder Woman's archenemy Cheetah has had enough. She then runs out of the bus, charging Wonder Woman, trying to take her down once and for all. But Slade tells Creeper that Cheetah can't stop the Amazon by herself. So Creeper says, "I guess I'm taking on an undead goddess." And as he's walking out of the bus, Solomon Grundy says, "Not by self. Tree lobsters." Anyway, Solomon Grundy and Creeper then proceed to take on Wonder Woman. Meanwhile, Slade tells Gordon to get everyone else on the other bus, that he needs this one to clear a path for the rest of them, and that he has to get Rose. And she may not like him all that much, but that's entirely his fault. Gordon tells him, "I'm coming with you. That's Batman's son in there, and you might need help with your girl. We've lost enough kids, Slade." Meanwhile, Lady Shiva was listening in from the other bus saying, "Don't be idiotic. You can't risk everything for one person." Which soon becomes extremely ironic, as right after this, she gets off the bus telling all the kids to stay where they are, while she goes to save her daughter Cassandra from the zombie horde. But unfortunately, she gets infected in the process. Cassandra then looked at her with tears in her eyes saying, "Mother," and she replies, "It's over, Cassandra. You were the only person I admired." So then Shiva, the deadliest hands on earth, uses them on herself to tear out her own heart before she turned. Anyway, Slade and Gordon then go to rescue Jason and Rose from the crashed Batmobile. But Deathstroke soon realizes he has to keep the horde back while Gordon, Jason, and Rose get to safety. Rose then says that you'll be right behind us, yeah? Slade says that's definitely the plan, but in case I'm not, you survive the apocalypse and build something out of this mess. Yeah? But Rose could see the future, and she knew they both wouldn't survive, and this was going to be her last time saying goodbye. Meanwhile, Wonder Woman is still fighting Creeper, Grundy, and Cheetah, but now we see her win by literally crushing Cheetah's throat, ripping Creeper's head off, and then punching a hole straight through Grundy's chest. And she's holding him there, allowing a zombie horde to tear him apart. We see Deathstroke is still fighting off a horde all by himself, allowing his daughter and company to get to safety. While the comic says Slade could survive most things, his body could repair itself, but if his organs were taken, he would be done for. The comic then goes on to say there was a moment where he single-handedly held back the anti-life hordes, where he looked untouchable, where he looked unkillable. But then on the next panel, we see Wonder Woman literally fly straight into Deathstroke full speed, causing him to explode everywhere, with a caption saying Deathstroke was just gone. She left nothing of him to repair. Wonder Woman then turned on the rest of them by picking up the bus that Cassandra and the rest of the orphans resided in and flying it into the air, and when she was high enough, she let it go. But as we see the kids' faces of terror moments away from their death, we see lightning hit the bus midair with the word Shazam. And on the next page, we see it's Mary Marvel. That's right, Mary Marvel was one of the orphans the whole time. She's actually the mysterious superhero that saved the kids back in issue 1 of this miniseries, which is amazing because the big thing with that is that the orphans didn't know who the hero was. They just knew she saved them, reinforced the doors, barricaded the windows, and brought them all food. And then she just went away and never came back. This also makes all the sense in the world because in issue 2 of the series, we saw one of the infected orphans was Billy Batson, and the villains in Red Hood were forced to kill him. Anyway, Mary's like, I shouldn't have said the word. I know it, but I couldn't just let them die. I saw Billy Batson's eyes when the virus took hold of him. I was the one who locked them away. And the kids were like, Mary, you were the hero that helped us. Why did you stop? And she replies, I'll explain later. Keep driving. Get to the garden. I'm heading out there. We then find out Mary didn't continue to help the kids because she didn't want to be used in the world if she was to get infected. But she says, these kids are my world and I couldn't let them in. So she went to face death, aka Wonder Woman. The two then battle for a little bit and it's a pretty epic battle. But it ends with Mary punching Wonder Woman into the earth, causing a massive crater and explosion. Mary then quickly flies down to the bus and picks it up by bending the metal into a handle and flies it into the garden as it starts to open for them. Once inside, they all start to get off the bus and Gordon says, get ready, Wonder Woman will be coming. But Poison Ivy says, she won't. She can't reach the garden. And then freaking Dr. Fate says it's magically protected against her and all her kind. Then Zatanna says, welcome to post-apocalyptic Eden. And John Constantine finally adds, it's pretty if you can ignore all the dead people scratching on the walls. Ivy then proceeds to tell the kids that they're safe here in the garden and that nothing will harm them. And Harley's like, Ivy, look at all these new kids we get to corrupt. But Jason interrupts saying, sorry Harley, these ones come pre-corrupted by the best, as they look at stone memorials of the villains that died protecting them, with a plaque that says, villains, saviors, family, tree lobsters. Now we jump back to the main story with Dead Planet number 1. Issue 1 starts off with pretty much recapping what has happened over the course of the DCeased continuity. It literally says, we lost our heroes, we lost our world, we lost so much. We didn't think we had anything left to lose. We were wrong. As we see pictures of infected heroes like Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, Green Lantern, Flash, and Aquaman. You know, the founding members of the Justice League. The comic then cuts to the Oblivion Bar, where we see John Constantine drinking alone, as captions are saying, survivor's guilt. It's a nasty thing. It worms its way into your soul and sticks there. And no one embodies survivor's guilt as perfectly as John Constantine. He literally spent his nights there drinking with the ashes of his best friend. That's right, his best friend, Chas Chandler, got infected by the anti-life equation. So John was forced to set him on fire. Anyway, as John was drinking away his guilt and depression, Zatanna comes in saying, the world is depressing enough. You shouldn't be drinking alone. And he responds, I'm not. I'm never alone, as we see ghosts of his former colleagues in the bar with him. The comic then tells us that John Constantine was never big on sacrifices. He'd sacrifice others for the greater good, but he'd always avoid being that guy. However, Cyborg was that guy. He stayed behind as millions evacuated Earth. It existed in him, so he felt it was too dangerous for him to flee with the other survivors. He thought he was too much of a threat. So eventually, an infected Wonder Woman rips off his head, but he was a living computer, the pinnacle of apocalyptin in Earth technology, and he miscalculated. You see, he didn't die, and his head was just forced to watch the world tear itself apart. So for 5 years, he searched his system for a way out. And eventually he found his friend had betrayed him. He found a secret tracker buried deep inside of him by the Batman, and he turned it on. He then modified this tracker and made it into a signal, and then boosted that signal to a new world. We are then taken to Earth 2, where the Justice League are currently under attack from an alien empire. And what's crazy is this is 5 years later, so Jonathan Kent, Damian Wayne, and Cassidy and so on are older. Meaning John is officially the new Superman, Cassie is officially the new Wonder Woman, and Damian is still Batman. He's just older because remember, he became Batman right after his father died. And I gotta say, Damian is a great Batman in this, and him and John's relationship and back and forth is amazing. For instance, when Damian infiltrates the alien ship, John goes, okay, remember, we just want to talk to them. Damian says, sure, while kicking an alien straight in the face. To which John says, what was that thud? Damian responds, nothing. And John says, it sounded like a boot to the face. We then see a close-up on Damian saying, stupid super hearing, with John replying, I heard that. Long story short, Damian is trying to rip these aliens a new one, but John comes in interrupting, saying to the alien, I don't know if the translator can express the concept of a cliche, but I'd like to take you to our leader. And we find out that leader is now Lois Lane, more specifically, President Lois Lane. She's the president of New Metropolis, home to 13 million human survivors on Earth 2. As Lois is negotiating with these aliens, Alfred calls Damian saying, "Your briefcase is beeping, sir." And it appears to be beeping in Morse code. Batman and the rest of the Justice League find out it's coming from Earth. And it's a Morse code message that translates to JL, standing for Justice League. But Green Arrow thinks it's a trap, saying maybe he's infected and the anti-life virus is trying to lure us back to Earth to finish us off. Ultimately, it came down to a vote where the entire Justice League voted to go back to save their friend, because that's what the Justice League and heroes do. They risk everything, even just to save one person. We then cut to Green Arrow and Black Canary, who became the new Green Lantern of Earth after Hal Jordan became infected. Green Arrow, or Oliver, keeps telling Dinah that this is a stupid idea, that they've already lost so many friends like Hal, Barry, Bruce, and so on. She then tells him, "You voted too," and he replies, "You think I was gonna keep my hand down when all the kids had theirs up?" She's like, "You should stay here. I'll be back before you know it." And he's like, "No way, we stay together," before being like, "Wait a minute, did you just try to bench me?" Then after a little husband and wife back and forth, he tries to prove to her that he's formidable. He even says to her, "Hey, I killed the undead king of the sea while he was controlling the Kraken." He's like, "Sure, you have a magical ring that can do almost anything on top of the screaming, and then there's the sword that can kill a god." To which she says, "Do you want the sword?" And he says, "Don't be ridiculous." And she tells him, "That's not a no." And he's like, "I don't want the sword." So she gets down on one knee, holding the sword to him, sarcastically saying, "But I have so many incredible abilities. I barely have room to hold a magic sword that can kill a god." At which point he eventually takes the god-killing sword. For those of you who are unaware, this was Wonder Woman's sword, but after Superman infected Wonder Woman gave it to Dinah before she turned, saying she has to stop Superman. Anyway, we then see the Justice League heading back to Earth. And on the way there, Kilowog points out to Jonathan Kent that his father, Superman, is still eating the sun. For those of you who don't remember, in issue 6 of DCeased, an infected Superman realizes he couldn't stand the entirety of the Green Lantern Corps. So he fled into the sun, calculating another way to win, which was basically him absorbing and feeding off of the sun, draining it, so in time the entire solar system would grow cold and die. At which point, the Justice League and all surviving humans on the ship fled Earth and found Earth 2. But now, 5 years later, we see Superman is still feeding on the sun. Anyway, Kilowog, who's guarding this area, says, "The Earth is getting colder, so it's working." Right after this, the Green Lantern's rings start to go off, and it says, "Projectile incoming," that something's coming from Earth. So of course, the heroes prepare for whatever's coming. But when this thing breaks through the Green Lantern's shields, we find out on the next page, it's just Crypto, Superman's dog. Anyway, after this, the Justice League make their way to Earth, where they find Cyborg's head and body. Cyborg is trying to tell them something, but they can't understand him. So they take his head and body back to the ship. And as they're doing this, something hits the ship, breaking it in half, right down the middle. But luckily, Superman was able to catch the part with his friends inside. And on the next page, we see that it was Wonder Woman who flew through the ship. And not only that, she captured and infected Green Arrow. And Green Arrow's last words are, "Dinah, I'm sorry, pretty bird." This obviously causes Green Canary, as I'm gonna call her from here on out, to lose her mind and start blasting the infected Wonder Woman. And she's blasting her with her canary cry, causing Wonder Woman to fly back and fall on the ground. Meanwhile, Superman finally understands what Cyborg has been trying to say. While this is happening, we see that Green Canary picked up the God Killer sword and was about to drive it straight through Wonder Woman's back, killing her once and for all. But Superman yells out, "Dinah, don't, we can save her," and then jumps in between Dinah and Wonder Woman. But it's too late. It happens so fast that the sword goes through Superman's shoulder and Wonder Woman. Superman just lays there, wounded on top of Wonder Woman's bloody body, saying, "Dinah, there's a cure." As that's what Cyborg has been trying to tell them the whole time, and why he called his friends back to Earth. And this, my friends, is the end of issue 1. Issue 2 starts off with Roy Harper, aka Arsenal, trying to save people he's protecting from a horde of infected by telling them to get into the bunker. He then tells them all to get ready to barricade the doors, and then zip lines down from the roof and lands next to a little girl, who says, "Mr. Arsenal, are the monsters gonna get us?" He replies, "It'll be okay, Gracie. We'll wait them out like always. I won't let them reach you. Go inside." But out of nowhere, one of the guys there screams out, "Roy." And as Roy looks up, he sees it's the infected heroine, Fire, and she blasts him with green flames, killing him on the spot, while Gracie looks on horrified as her friend and hero is melting before her. And as Gracie looks on terrified in tears, John Constantine and his Shadow Pack arrive behind her, saying, "All right, let's kick this equation in the ass." If you didn't know, Shadow Pack has been around for a long time in DC. They're a dope yet pretty unknown team unless you're a die-hard DC fan. In any case, this incarnation of the team consists of Constantine, Zatanna, Red Hood, Ragman, Blue Devil, Detective Chimp, and Ravager. The Shadow Pack then start attacking the Blighted Ones, with Detective Chimp ripping off arms, Ravager cutting off heads, and Red Hood blowing off the Blighted Ones' brains. I also like how a caption in the comic says, "Red Hood, kind of like Batman, but not as squeamish, as he's shooting people through the head. While several of the members take care of the blighted ones on the ground, Zatanna takes to the air to get rid of fire with a spell. And whatever spell she used caused Fire's fire to go out, making her crash into a building. While the Shadow Pack is trying to defeat the blighted ones on the ground, Swamp Thing shows up behind Constantine, scaring him, saying, "John Constantine, I need to talk to you about a garden." Constantine's like, "Look, I'm sure you have some fascinating stuff to say about plants, but me, I'm kind of busy fighting the undead here." Swamp Thing then has spiked vines shoot from the earth, instantly impaling and simultaneously defeating the blighted army. To which Constantine says, "See, why didn't you just open with that?" Constantine then tells Swamp Thing, "Look, I know about the garden in Gotham. It's where we take the survivors." And Swamp Thing's like, "No, there's another garden in Australia." John's like, "I'm not going to Australia, mate. That place was dangerous before the undead. I'm not going to survive the end only to step on a stonefish or have my brain eaten by a drop bear." Swamp Thing responds by cursing at him, which shocks the whole team. They're all like, "Whoa, did Swamp Thing just..." And Constantine's like, "Yeah." Zatanna says, "That's new." And Constantine replies, "Yeah, I'm kind of proud of that." Swamp Thing then says there's two gardens, Poison Ivy's garden of Gotham and another which I am cut off from. The other is screaming, crying out, "I cannot ignore it anymore. There are humans there. If you'd like them to survive what I have to do, I believe you should come with me." So they do. Meanwhile, back at Poison Ivy's garden in Gotham, we see Cassie, now Wonder Woman, bring John Superman's body to Dr. Fate and Mary Shazam, asking for their help to heal him. As remember, he was stabbed in the previous issue by Green Canary. We also get a nice back and forth between Jason Todd and Damian Wayne, and this is the first time Jason has seen Damian since the virus started. And Jason is incredibly happy to see him, saying, "Your father made a lot of very bad decisions, but making you Batman is not one of them," as the two hug. Green Canary then tries to bring an infected Green Arrow into the garden inside of one of her energy constructs, but Poison Ivy's like, "Nope, not gonna happen. I will not risk the lives of all the people here so you can cling to a corpse." To which Canary says, "Fine, then we'll go." But Hawker, holding Cyborg's head, says, "He's not gone. There's a cure." And Harley says, "A cure?" Jason Todd then says, "We've destroyed every carrier of the anti-life equation we've encountered for the last 5 years." And Ravager says, "Including friends and family." Harley jumps back in saying, "They could have been saved. Everyone killed could have lived." And Damian says, "You had no way of knowing. None of us did." Ravager then asks Cyborg what the cure is. And he says, "I spoke to the anti-life equation, but all it said was the cure was inside me." And Dr. Fate says, "We have access to magic and science, and now we have hope. We will find the cure." This of course makes Cassie very sad, telling Damian, "Wonder Woman was gone. I dealt with that. To watch her, to lose Diana twice like this?" And Damian looks at her saying, "I know, I'm sorry. Whatever you need, I'm here for you," as he takes off his cowl and the two kiss. We are then taken back to Australia, where Swamp Thing has taken the Shadow Pack, or at least several members of the Shadow Pack. We then see the Australian bunker there and learn that the garden is screaming for help, surrounded by a ring of fire and a moat of blood and a few thousand undead. Constantine is like, "Zatanna, can you use your magic to lift us up over the anti-living in the blood moat? And then I'll create a gap in the hellfire." So Zatanna does, and as they're flying over the undead and the blood moat, Ragman says, "The blood moat, it's shifting." And Detective Chimp says, "It's not blood." Ragman's like, "What?" Detective Chimp says once again, "It's not blood. It's the Plastic Man." That's right, it's a blighted Plastic Man. Plastic Man then starts taking form, creating giant spikes, impaling each of the members like Ragman, Blue Devil, and even Zatanna. And we're not just talking about impaling through the stomach or chest, he's impaling people through their throats, their eyes, and nostrils. Gory stuff. The comic even says, as long as we're filled with undead shapeshifter, impervious skin was useless, as eyes and brain matter were forced out of the devil's head from the inside. Earth's magical rescuers fell into a mouth of evil, while the greater evil looked on with cold and uncaring eyes. And just like that, issue 2 comes to an end. Okay, so that wraps up the first 2 issues of the Deceased Dead Planet, so now let's move on to issue 3. The issue starts off in Australia inside of a giant plant ball that Swamp Thing created to protect what's left of the Shadow Pack. We see Detective Chimp ask Zatanna if she's okay. She says yes, so Constantine asks, "Are you an agent of the unliving?" And she replies, "No." Constantine then replies, "Good." She then asks, "What happened?" And he says, "We got our butts kicked. You had your lungs filled with anti-living Plastic Man." She's like, "Well then, how am I alive?" And Detective Chimp tells her, "Blue Devil saved you, but he didn't make it. Ragman fell too." The next page then shows us a huge panel of the anti-living Plastic Man attacking the plant ball that Swamp Thing made to protect him and his friends. Constantine then tells Zatanna, "We're in a ball of plants, surrounded by a rampaging shape-shifting monster beside a wall of hellfire, which is why we needed you to wake up." Then Zatanna says, "What are you proposing?" Constantine and Detective Chimp then answer her saying, "We're next to a wall of hellfire. That stuff will burn through anything and anyone." And Zatanna's like, "Oh, I see." Zatanna then says, "Swamp Thing, call off the green in 3, 2, 1, as she burns the anti-living Plastic Man to a crisp with hellfire. With Plastic Man defeated, the Shadow Pack looks at the remains of their friends, like Ragman and Blue Devil, but Constantine eventually says, can we move this regret to somewhere that isn't between a wall of hellfire and an onrushing horde of the anti-living? Captions in the comic then say, we weren't prepared for an undead Plastic Man. We were even less prepared for the evil we found hiding in the bunker. When all of a sudden machine guns start firing at Swamp Thing from inside the bunker. But I mean, come on, it's Swamp Thing. He probably sees the machine gun fire as annoying gnats. In any case, the comic continues to say, while referring to the evil inside the bunker, it's not the anti-living. It's a different kind of evil, cold and calculating, absolutely detestable in every way. The bunker was a refugee full of rich bastards. As we see Penguin and Maxwell Lord come out saying, if you're planning on coming in, this is your window, or you could lie in the dirt and die. I really don't care. The comic then takes us to Ivy's garden in Gotham, where we see Batman is sewing Superman's cape. Keep in mind, Bruce Wayne is dead in this continuity, and the new Batman is now Damian Wayne. A voice then says, not gonna lie, I never imagined Batman sewing. Damian answers saying, my father was too dependent on Alfred. It was a little embarrassing. Batman should be entirely self-sufficient. Batman should sew. We then see that the voice is Jim Gordon saying, it's good to see you, son, and it's good to have Batman back. Jim then goes in for a handshake, but Damian says, oh, come here, giving him a huge hug. To which Jim responds, your father wasn't a hugger. Damian replies, oh, believe me, I remember, but I'm not as emotionally stunted. We're just lucky Scarecrow never realized Bruce's greatest fear was intimacy. Jim's like, yeah, Batman could have been chased out of Gotham by a supportive pat on the shoulder. Anyway, Dr. Fate then flies in, interrupting them, saying, Damian Wayne, Superman's healing was successful. He will awake soon. We are then taken to the Tower of Fate, where Superman, aka Jonathan Kent, wakes up. Because remember, his father Clark Kent was infected at the end of the original DCeased story, so he took up his father's mantle. Anyway, he's greeted by Krypto and Mary Marvel, who was sleeping by the bed waiting for him to wake up. John then asks, where am I? Mary replies, you're in the Tower of Fate, safe in Poison Ivy's garden. You were stabbed with a magical kryptonite sword. It was messy, but Dr. Fate really lived up to his title, and I was able to patch you back together. Meanwhile, back in the bunker in Australia, Penguin shows the Shadow Pack around saying, welcome to the Southern Bunker. Maxwell Lord then says, it's all quite civilized. We have our own soldiers and their families are employed as cleaning and cooking staff. Then Zatanna speaks up saying, you seem pretty proud of your slaves, Maxwell Lord. Simon Stagg then says, their service is given in exchange for shelter. They're not slaves. At which point Constantine then pipes in saying, I can't believe you found a way to keep the class system in place through an apocalypse. While they're walking through the bunker, we see plant life growing on the walls, and Swamp Thing grabs a fruit saying, the green, it's crying out in here. It screams. At which point Jason Blood comes out saying, John Constantine. To which he replies, Jason Blood, of course. Rich toffs have to stay together. And that explains the Hellfire. Blood then says, can we have a word? Alone? Once alone, Blood says one of my favorite rhymes in all of fiction, gone, gone form of man, rise the demon, Etrigan. But Constantine doesn't appreciate the rhyming as much as I do, saying, before you start, can we please skip the rhyming? I just lost 2 friends, and I'm not in the mood for amateur poetry hour. Etrigan just looks at John saying, you are very mean, John Constantine, which is hilarious coming from a demon. Etrigan then tells John, hell isn't happy. John replies, no, it's really not known for that. Etrigan continues to say, souls are locked inside the anti-living, and Constantine replies, and hell is annoyed they're not getting a piece of all this Armageddon. Etrigan replies, beyond annoyed. Trigon is coming to wipe it all away. And he says this while we get an awesome shot of Trigon looking at Earth from hell. Constantine then says, wipe what away? And Etrigan replies, all of it. The people in this place plan a new human race, but they're not going to get a chance. Trigon is going to destroy this world, and nothing can stop him. Constantine's like, sure, heard that before, at which point they start hearing gunfire, and we find out it's soldiers shooting Swamp Thing. Long story short, Swamp Thing's freaking out because they've imprisoned the Floronic Man, and they're torturing him, having him force the Green to produce for them. Constantine says, Swamp Thing, these are some of the most selfish people alive, but people don't think of the Green like you do. So let's see if we could talk about this before we do something we're gonna regret. And he's saying this to him as Swamp Thing has Maxwell Lord suspended in the air with one of his vines. Lord is like, listen to your superiors, Bush. Swamp Thing replies, you release the Floronic Man now, Maxwell Lord. You will release the Green. Lord says, I don't take orders from a walking houseplant. So Swamp Thing proceeds to squeeze Maxwell Lord so tight with his vines that his head literally pops off. There's a pop caption sound effect and everything. Obviously, Penguin isn't too pleased with this, so he says, Professor Ivo, it's time. At which point, they unleash Amazo, an android with all of the powers of the Justice League in one convenient little package. But as the comic goes on, we see they don't just have one Amazo, they have several. At which point, Constantine is like, it's time to go, guys. We'll come back later when we have a plan. With the Shadow Pack retreated, we see Penguin say in a secret lab with countless Amazos, we won't need to be here much longer, Stag. They're almost ready. We'll take back the world soon enough. Meanwhile, Constantine and gang go back to Ivy's garden in Gotham to talk to the Justice League. Constantine comes up with a plan, but says, Cassie, who is Wonder Woman now, I'm gonna need to borrow your lasso. Constantine then goes to a mysterious house in the middle of nowhere to find Mr. Miracle, who we thought to be dead, but apparently he lived and only his wife Barda died. Constantine says, I need your help saving the world. Mr. Miracle replies, that didn't work out so well the last time. Constantine then says, what if I told you there was a way to save her? Mr. Miracle then says, whatever con you're pulling, I'm not biting. You're a walking bag of lies, Constantine. How could I possibly believe you? John then says, ask me, while holding out the lasso of truth. He then continues to tell Mr. Miracle, there's a cure and we could save your wife. Mr. Miracle then asks, what do you need me to do? John says, first I need you to take a shower or a bath because I need to convince people this plan will work, and you don't inspire confidence while smelling like that. Then we need your help stealing the throne from a god as the comic ends. So let's continue with issue 4. The issue opens up with John Constantine, Detective Chimp, and Mr. Miracle boom tubing in to Ivy's garden where the rest of the heroes are. And out of nowhere, Batman pops up saying Constantine, to which he replies, bloody hell, where did you come from? Batman then says, do you really think it's a good idea to open an explosive portal in the middle of a sanctuary during an undead apocalypse? Constantine then tells him they're literally called boom tubes, and I'm sure they could change them to some soothing ocean sounds or something, but you know gods, they're all about the awe. Anyway, Batman then turns to Mr. Miracle saying, you're not dead scot-free, and Scott replies, and you've shrunk, Batman. Detective Chimp then starts to explain the plan to everyone, saying Cyborg may have a cure inside of him, but he can't access it. Metron's Mobius chair contains all the knowledge of the new gods. If there's an answer to be found, it's in there. Dr. Fate then says Metron is one of the fastest entities in existence. He cannot be caught. Batman then says Metron prizes knowledge above all else, to which Chimp says, what do we have that he can't ignore? Constantine then says, how about the future? This is Madame Xanadu's crystal ball. Zatanna's like, and does Xanadu know you have that? He replies, I'm guessing she does now. Mr. Miracle says this could work, and John says, I'm really gonna need that back when you're done with it. Miracle says, I'll take this to New Genesis, but I'm not sure how we'll be received. Superman then says, you'll be received with friends by your side. I won't speak for others, but anyone best suited for space is welcome to join us. Superman asks, where is Dinah? And Harley tells him, oh right, you missed it because you were skewered by a magic sword and bleeding out. Ivy said her and her husband couldn't come in, so she had a bit of a tantrum and flew away. I think she was probably feeling a little guilty about almost killing you and stabbing Wonder Woman through the throat. She then looks at the new Wonder Woman, Cassie, and says, it's funny, killing Wonder Woman and Superman used to be high on the bucket list of a lot of my friends. And Cassie just stares back at her with a pissed off look on her face while Harley's like, okay, maybe it's not that funny. Right after this, Mary Marvel's like, I'll come with you, Superman, as he goes looking for Dinah in the city. Eventually he finds her sitting on top of a building in the middle of the rain. And when Dinah sees Superman, she's like, John, you're okay. I'm so sorry. And Superman's like, I'm fine. Really. You couldn't have known. We also see that Dinah's holding her husband, Oliver Queen, aka Green Arrow, in a ball construct on a leash. Superman then tells her there's a cure. We don't have it yet, but we're going after it. We're gonna take on a god. We could really use your help. Dinah then tells him, I can't just leave him in the middle of all this. And Mary Marvel's like, don't worry. Me and Dr. Fate will sneak him into Ivy's garden. She'll never know. He'll be fine. So now with the help of Green Canary, Superman, Mr. Miracle, Mary Marvel, and Wonder Woman head to New Genesis. Anyway, once Mr. Miracle and gang arrive on New Genesis, he almost instantly gets into a fight with his brother Orion, who's like, what in the fires of apocalypse do you think you're doing here? You would walk into New Genesis with the anti-life virus? At which point Orion just gives Mr. Miracle a right hook saying, stand. And when he does, he punches him back to the ground again. Superman then says, leave him alone. And the caption in the comic tells us Batman theorized that given his unique physiology, John would be stronger than his father. And then on the next page, we see Superman KO a god, with the caption finishing saying, as usual, Batman's theory proved correct, with a panel of Superman telling Orion, stay down. Right after this, Highfather comes out, which is obviously Mr. Miracle and Orion's father. At which point, Mr. Miracle tells his dad, we need the Mobius chair. Will you call out to Metron? He responds, he may not come. No one rules over Metron. He's only ruled by his quest for knowledge. So Mr. Miracle holds out the crystal ball saying, that's where this comes in. Highfather then shows Scott, aka Mr. Miracle, his son, saying, you should take him now. He replies, I brought him here to protect him. Highfather then says, Scott, that was 5 years ago, before you and Barda, to which Scott interrupts saying, don't. They then continue to have a back and forth where Highfather is basically telling Scott, don't let the pain of Barda's death prevent you from having a relationship with your son. After this, Mr. Miracle and gang go to where Apocalypse used to be, because if you guys remember at the beginning of DCeased, it was torn apart when an infected Darkseid leaped into the planet's fire pits and destroyed the planet and all who lived upon it from within. Anyway, they're there waiting for Metron, and when he arrives, they offer him the crystal ball as a way to see the future. And as soon as Metron goes to take it, they ambush him, trying to rip him from the Mobius chair. But that doesn't go over so well, and Metron is able to fend them off before sitting back in the chair and running away. At which point, Superman catches up to him saying, wait, please, I never wanted to fight. And Metron says, yet you did. Superman then replies, we need your help. Metron then says, I don't care. And Mary Marvel interjects saying, don't you, Metron? You're supposed to be one of the most intelligent beings in the universe. If we fail to contain this and death wins, what happens to knowledge? He replies, you should have opened with that instead of an ambush. Long story short, Metron agrees to let them use the chair for a second while he uses the crystal ball. Because he's all about knowledge, but the future is the one thing he can't see, so this crystal ball is very intriguing to him. While Metron is using the crystal ball, Cyborg sits in the Mobius chair and gets the answer for the cure, saying, I need to recode my blood. The life equation is there, and while Superman says thank you to Metron, Metron says while staring at the crystal ball, I can't be here, I must leave now, handing the ball back to Wonder Woman, with her saying, did he just? And Green Canary replies, yeah, he just took a look at the future and ran the hell away. It's at this point we're taken to Black Racer, who's looking at the core of Apocalypse, which is on the verge of exploding, with a caption saying, only Black Racer witnessed what came next. Only the god of the end witnessed the cool molten core of Apocalypse crack, and Death uttered 2 words, Darkseid isn't, as an anti-life Darkseid burst from Apocalypse's core. And I just gotta say, it looks awesome. We are then taken back to New Genesis, where Highfather felt the universe change. He felt his brother unborn, at which point he basically tells all of New Genesis, all hands on deck. While the comic says, but by the time he felt it, it was too late. An unliving Darkseid was already upon them, as we get an epic shot of an unliving Darkseid squashing Orion with his hand, ready to tear into New Genesis. Now that closes out issue 4 of the Dead Planet miniseries, so let's move on to issue 5. The issue starts off with John Constantine standing in front of a room within the Tower of Fate that now resides inside the Gotham Garden. Dr. Fate then asks, Constantine, what are you doing? He replies, Dr. Fate, fancy finding you floating here. Fate then says, what's in this room? Why can't I see inside it? John replies, because the door is closed. Fate then says no doors are closed to Dr. Fate. Constantine then tells him, that's a good line, but it's certainly not true. Fate then asks, what are you keeping inside? And John replies, oh, you know, just a rack of identical trench coats. John then walks inside telling Dr. Fate, don't worry about it. This is the Tower of Fate, so whatever is in here is clearly meant to be in here. Otherwise, you have to rename this place. On the next page, we see John has summoned Etrigan inside of the room. Etrigan is all like, why have you summoned me, you sad Merlin wannabe? Constantine replies, you know why I summoned you. You're just plain dumb because you're overreaching for a rhyme. What's the update from hell? How long until Trigon comes? Etrigan tells John, you should fear. He'll soon be here. John replies, why is poetry always so damn vague? Just give me an answer. Etrigan then tells him he's pretty pissed. I'd say 3 turns until all life on this world burns. At which point John says, heard enough? And Swamp Thing appears saying, yes. Constantine then tells Etrigan, you could go. He replies, see you in hell, scruffy infidel. John and Swamp Thing then make their way out of the room. But before they leave, John grabs Ragman's cloak. And as they're walking out, Fate asks Swamp Thing, what does that room hold? And he replies, a rack of coats. To which Constantine starts laughing. John then finds Damian Wayne Batman asking him, are you as good as your old man? Damian replies, not yet. John then asks, but you're close? Damian then just kind of ignores him, and John says, yeah, that's what I thought. Damian then asks, what do you need? John tells him, I need to do some questionable things. I need to do them while Mary Marvel is galaxies away, and I could use a team to keep me alive. I can't say more, but it's for the good of the world and all that. Batman says, not good enough. John then asks, you don't trust me? And he replies, I mean, of course not. Batman then says, tell me the whole truth and I'll help you, and I'll know if you're lying. John looks at him saying, no, you won't. Damian then just stares at him, and John finally says, oh crap, you will, won't you? You're like your dad. Fine. So of course after this, Constantine tells Batman his plan, to which he asks, are you planning on killing anyone? Constantine replies, no one will die who isn't already dead. You won't change my mind, and it's the only way. Batman says, you said you needed a team. John's like, yes, the others are waiting, as we see Red Hood, Ravager, and Cassandra Cain Batgirl. So now with the team in place consisting of Batman, Red Hood, Cassandra Cain, Ravager, Swamp Thing, and Constantine himself, John is able to set out on his mission to enact his plan. John then uses a spell that allows him to follow Swamp Thing's soul through the green and world to go where they have to go, and that place would be Nanda Parbat. Once there, Red Hood says, that's a lot of anti-living. Then Batman says, they look like the League of Assassins. I heard the sensei used to try to attack Nanda Parbat with them all the time. I guess he was trying again when the virus hit. Of course, Red Hood pulls out his guns ready to start mowing down zombies, but Cassandra then says, there's a cure. We can't kill people. Ravager then asks, can we break their bones and put holes in them? Batman responds, of course. We then get an awesome page of Constantine, Red Hood, and Batgirl taking on some anti-living. During the fight, Red Hood says, Rose, any flashes of the future would be pretty appreciated right about now. Any insight on what we do once we reach the gate? She replies, we knock politely. She then tells Red Hood, keep the blighted ones off me. He then tells her, keeping the blighted ones off you was in our vows. If you didn't know, when Ravager knocks on the gate, she is greeted by Deadman, who says, my friends, welcome to Nanda Parbat. As he opens the gates, an army comes out helping Constantine and his friends. He then invites them inside saying, follow me, would you like something to drink, maybe some snacks? And then on the next page, we see the Spear of Destiny resides inside the walls of the city. The comic then tells us the Spear of Destiny was said to be powerful enough to kill a god. It's been guarded by Nanda Parbat for a generation. John Constantine then walks up to it going to grab it, but Ramakushna comes up to him saying, so this is why you've come, Hellblazer. She basically tells him something to the effect of, you think with all the deaths out there, I would allow you to take this? My home is yours while you're here, Constantine, but I would never allow you to take the Holy Lance. He then grabs it saying, I know, while saying sorry, stabbing her right in the stomach with it. Deadman then comes over flying saying, no, why? Constantine then says, I never felt the need to explain myself to a dead man. He then pulls out Ragman's cloak saying, not starting now, sucking Deadman into it. The comic then tells us since 1812 BCE, Ragman's Cloak of Souls had stolen spirits and used them to empower the wearer. Cassandra then asks, what did you do? John replies, we're leaving, opening up a portal to the Rock of Eternity. While following him through, Red Hood says, seriously, what the hell was that? John replies, don't worry about it. Red Hood says, don't worry about it, you stabbed a goddess. Constantine says, not fatally, she'll get over it in a few centuries, but she never would have let me take this. While walking through the Rock of Eternity, Ravager says, no, get us out of here, Constantine, as she sees a glimpse of the future. She then starts firing into the distance, and then on the next page, we see an infected Captain Marvel Jr. coming in fast, but of course the bullets don't stop him. So he then flies so hard into Jason Todd, he breaks him in half. After which Batman and Swamp Thing are able to subdue Captain Marvel Jr. But as Rose goes over to check on Jason Todd, an infected wizard Shazam comes out of nowhere, but she just throws a sword directly into his head. At this point, Captain Marvel Jr. gets free, so Cassandra Cain picks up the wizard Shazam staff saying the words Shazam, turning herself into a Batgirl Shazam. With the power of Shazam, she makes quick work of the infected Captain Marvel Jr. The comic even says after the death of Lady Shiva, Cassandra Cain became the greatest living hand-to-hand fighter on the planet. Anti-living Captain Marvel Jr. never stood a chance, as she smashes his face on the ground. After this, Ravager says to Jason Todd, "I'm sorry, I saw it, but I couldn't." Jason then interrupts saying, "Hey, it's okay. I've died before. I'm not so afraid this time. I was just lucky I got a second life. And my second life was with you." He then kisses his wife before he dies in her arms. Constantine, Swamp Thing, Batgirl, and Ravager then head back to Gotham Garden, where Constantine is now holding the Spear of Destiny and Shazam's staff. Rose then looks at John saying, "Promise me this was worth it." He replies, "I promise this was the only way. And if I'm wrong, well, we'll be too dead to notice." And then out of nowhere, Batman gives Constantine a huge right hook. And then a voice says, "You deserve that." And on the next page, we see it's the Spectre. Constantine says, "Oh, what a shock. The Ghost of Wrath thinks I deserve a punch in the face." Spectre replies, "You're holding an object that can end me. That's concerning. I could stop what you're doing, Constantine." Constantine says, "Yeah, I know, Jim, but you're the Spectre. You're the spirit of vengeance. Why don't you use all your power to channel it into a bit of insight? What do you think I'm motivated by?" Constantine says, "Good night, Jimmy." Issue 6 starts off in Australia with Penguin asking Professor Ivo if the Amazo army is ready. Ivo responds, "Very nearly, Penguin. I'm fine-tuning because one wrong calculation and these androids won't just take out all the anti-life on the planet, they'll wipe out all of us as well." Penguin then yells at him saying, "You promised results, Ivo." He responds, "Considering I'm the sole commander of a super-powered, artificially intelligent army that can destroy the very planet you're standing on, maybe you should review your tone. I will be done soon. The Undead could wait a little longer." We are then taken to the Justice League in the Gotham Garden, where Cyborg says, "The life equation. It's in me. My blood is recoded. It's done." Superman asks, "What comes next?" Cyborg then says, "I don't know. I don't know how to turn it into a cure." Batman then jumps in while playing with Ace saying, "We need knowledge. If only we had one of the world's greatest biochemists with us," as he walks away finding Swamp Thing. Because as most of us know, before Alec Holland turned into Swamp Thing, he was a brilliant biologist and biochemist. So Batman goes up to Swamp Thing saying, "We need Holland's mind if it's still in there. We need Dr. Holland." Swamp Thing replies, "Alec was a brilliant biologist and biochemist, but even he cannot do what you are asking. Not alone." Batman responds, "Oh, I know, which is why you won't be alone." As we see Batman gather the greatest minds still alive to figure out how to turn Cyborg's blood into a cure. At which point they were linked by the Green and the telepathic powers of Dr. Fate, making all the minds one. And we see the characters he gathered with Swamp Thing, Nobel Prize winning biochemist, Poison Ivy, Doctor of Toxology, Cyborg infused with the greatest technology of two worlds, Mary Marvel, who possesses the wisdom of Solomon, Detective Chimp, the world's greatest problem solver, Harley Quinn, a doctor of psychology and medicine, Wallace West, the fastest mind on the planet, and Batman because he's Batman. Literally, that's what the comic says, which is pretty great. And sometime later, they were all able to figure out how to turn Cyborg's blood into a cure. Meanwhile, Dr. Ivo tells everyone at the Australian bunker that the Amazo army is ready. While back in the Gotham Garden, Superman says, "We could save them all." Then back in Australia, Penguin says, "We could wipe them all out. We can reclaim the world." As they launch their Amazos, which is an army with each one strong enough and fast enough to take on the Justice League. They moved as a swarm, ending all unlife, destroying the people the Justice League had just discovered how to save. After we see the Amazos starting their assault on all unlife, we see Cyborg say, "This is the cure, we hope. Now we need a test subject." Green Canary's like, "Ollie, you'll test it on Ollie," but Mr. Miracle's like, "No, Barda. We start with Barda." Green Canary's all like, "Why the hell should your wife be the first one to get the cure?" Mr. Miracle then looks at Green Canary saying, "I admit I want her back, but this just isn't about what I want. If we miss some calculation, if something goes wrong, Barda is hopefully strong enough to take it. We shouldn't risk Ollie." So Mr. Miracle, Superman, and Green Canary go through a boom tube which takes them to a moon, where he was keeping Barda chained up so she wouldn't hurt herself or anyone else. But when they get there, they see she escaped. And on the next panel, we see Barda flying from above, smashing right through Green Canary's construct, tackling Mr. Miracle to the ground. As Barda's on top of her husband trying to rip him apart, Superman runs over, injecting her in the back of the neck with the cure. But it doesn't seem to be working. She's still attacking her husband, so Superman lights his eyes up with heat vision saying, "Scott, it's not working. Close your eyes. I have to get her off you." Scott replies, "Don't hurt her. Don't hurt her." And on the next page, we see that the cure finally kicks in. And Barda is now restored back to her normal self. Mr. Miracle then looks at his wife saying, "I missed you so much," as the two kiss. Meanwhile, back at the Tower of Fate, Zatanna comes storming into Constantine's private room, which we saw in issue 5, saying, "What do you think you're doing, Constantine?" He replies, "Hello, Z." She's like, don't you hello me. John, what have you done? The wizard staff? Madame Xanadu's crystal ball? The freaking spear of destiny? Is this what Jason died for? John, are you gonna tell me what this is all about? He basically tells her, you're just gonna have to trust me. He goes on to say, because if I tell you, I know what you're gonna do. You're gonna try to stop me. She replies, you don't know that. And he says while holding Madame Xanadu's crystal ball, actually I do. I saw the future. We fight, it's messy, best avoided. After this, Constantine looks at the doorway to his top secret room that Z just broke, saying, oh bloody hell Z, I spent years protecting this room from Dr. Fate and whatever else would want to come in here, and you just left the door open. Anyone can walk in, and as he says this, the Phantom Stranger comes walking in. Constantine then says, Phantom Stranger, I've already had a visit from the Ghost of Apocalypse Past. You must be the Ghost of Apocalypse Present. Zatanna's like, what, John? And he's like, Spectre came by. Phantom Stranger then tells him, you took the wizard staff, you took Ragman's cloak, and you stabbed Ramakushna with the Spear of Destiny, and you imprisoned Boston Brand. Zatanna then says, what, John? John and the Phantom Stranger then get into an argument with John saying, I chose to do the things I didn't want to do because they had to get done. After what you did to get yourself doomed for all eternity, are you seriously judging me, you two-faced prick? At which point Phantom Stranger says, how dare you, throwing Constantine across the room. But Constantine just gets up, grabbing the Spear of Destiny, saying, go on, try it. Now at this point, Zatanna summons Etrigan, but as he arrives, he says, gone now, O Etrigan, and rise again the form of man, arriving in the form of Jason Blood. Blood then says, Constantine, we have to talk. Constantine replies, I take it Trigon is coming? Blood answers, yes, he will set cloven foot on Earth in moments, and the world will burn. But there's more. John says sure, because that's not enough. At which point we're taken back to the Gotham Garden where Mr. Miracle, Superman, and Green Canary return with a cured Barda. Cyborg then says there's no sign of degeneration in Barda. They're stuck in some kind of unlife. Not living, not dying. Everyone infected with the anti-life equation is essentially frozen in their life cycle. We could bring them all back. We could start producing the cure today. Harley then says, well, we have a bit of time. They're not getting any undeader. Constantine then shows up with Z saying, we don't have any time at all. He then explains that Penguin and Dr. Ivo have unleashed an army of Amazos coming to wipe out all unlife right before they have a chance to save them. So Wallace West, the fastest mind on the planet, began reading every book and paper he could find on production. And in about 10 minutes, the Flash was an expert and had quite enough knowledge to join Swamp Thing and Cyborg in manufacturing a cure, which they did at Magnus Labs, which was the fastest producing laboratory in the world, meaning it's very fortunate it was still standing. But as they're making the cure, the demon Trigon arrives on Earth, bursting through the catacombs in Paris at 10 p.m. Meanwhile, back in the Tower of Fate, Constantine decides to let Dr. Fate inside of his secret room, asking Z to wait outside. When Dr. Fate arrives inside, he sees the Spear of Destiny, Madame Xanadu's crystal ball, and Constantine putting on Ragman's cloak, along with Etrigan and Phantom Stranger standing there. Constantine then says, Dr. Fate, I'm gonna need your helm and amulet. He replies, you can't be serious. Constantine then says, I get it's a little uncharacteristic for me, but yeah, for once, I'm serious. Phantom Stranger then stabs Dr. Fate in the stomach with the Spear of Destiny, saying, Constantine showed me the future, Kent Nelson. You would prevent what needs to happen. Fate then says, I will not relinquish the helm freely, and it cannot be removed by your magic, Constantine. John replies, yeah, we know. As he holds up Shazam's staff, saying Shazam while holding Fate's helmet, which releases the helmet from Nelson's head. Constantine then takes his amulet, at which point Zatanna walks in, seeing Dr. Fate's bloody body on the ground with the Spear of Destiny inside of him. To which Constantine says, I'm not gonna lie, this is exactly as bad as it looks. And he's saying this while being empowered with Shazam, wearing Fate's amulet and Ragman's cloak. He then tells Zatanna, see, this is exactly why I told you to wait outside. It's okay, Kent will live, I know. I'm a doctor now. Zatanna then asks Constantine, will you be able to come back from this? He looks at her saying, hey, it's me. She says, that's not an answer. He then looks at her saying, why are you the only person on this damn planet I don't want to disappoint? They then kiss, after which he flies off with all of these artifacts and now the power of Shazam, saying, ready or not, world, I'm coming to save you. And with that, issue 6 comes to an end and we move into the series finale in issue 7. Alright, so last we left off at the end of issue 6, John Constantine became Dr. Fate, along with possessing several other mystical and magical artifacts in the DC universe, like Ragman's cloak, the powers of Shazam, and so on and so forth, becoming the most powerful mystic in probably all of comic books. All of which Constantine did to stop Trigon and the Amazo army, who are out to eradicate all of the infected on Earth. And issue 7 picks up with just that, the Amazo army tearing through the infected left and right. The comic even says, unstoppable killing machines programmed to wipe out all anti-life on Earth. Each Amazo was created to be strong enough to face the Justice League. At which point we see a boom tube open up in the sky where the remaining members of the Justice League start flying through to attack and destroy the Amazos. As the comic captions continue to say, but this wasn't the Justice League the Amazos were built for. These were warriors, wielders of the living lightning, the greatest trained fighters on the planet, holders of the most powerful weapons in the universe, and actual gods. A desperate last line of defense, risking everything to protect the anti-living from the artificial intelligence. And as the captions are telling us this, we see Cassidy Wonder Woman about to pop off the head of an Amazo with her lasso, Mary Marvel and Cassandra Cain, Batgirl, pierced right through an Amazo with their lightning powered by the wizard Shazam, Green Canary crushed them with one of her constructs, and Barda, an actual god, decapitate an Amazo. And while the Justice League fight this Amazo swarm in Australia, Phantom Stranger and Zatanna are in Paris awaiting John Constantine to fight Trigon. The only problem is John still hasn't showed up for the fight. Z then tells Phantom Stranger he'll be here, to which he says, Zatanna, don't be naive. Captions then say, John had shown Stranger the future, so he couldn't walk without acting as our world died. He couldn't be a stranger any longer. At which point Stranger yells out, Trigon. Trigon then turns around and says, Phantom Stranger, you were supposed to walk forever in limbo. You were not supposed to choose a side. Stranger replies, yet I have. Elsewhere, the Super Sons, John Kent and Damian Wayne, have traveled to the Australian Garden, to the source of the Amazo army, to attempt to take them out remotely. The two of them then stop to see everyone the Amazos killed, with John Superman saying, my God, so many. We could have saved them. They didn't have to, and Batman interrupts telling John, the people inside couldn't have known there was a cure. And I don't want to sound callous, man, but we can't stop for the dead. And as they're about to continue on their journey, out of nowhere, something punches John across the face. And on the next page, we see it's an Amazo who then starts attacking Damian, but he's able to back handspring out of the way. The Amazo then uses heat vision to attack Damian. He dodges yet again, at which point Superman is able to put Amazo in a headlock saying, Batman, now. Batman then jumps in the air saying, keep holding it, while he puts some sort of electrical charge on his head, detonating it, destroying the Amazo. At this point, Penguin and several of his men come out to see Batman and Superman have destroyed an Amazo. Superman then asks, where's Professor Ivo? The Penguin then just looks at them saying, you must be a Robin, and you're the son, I take it. Superman then tells Penguin, we need to stop the Amazos, but Penguin just stares at him saying, no, that won't be happening. We planned our personal oasis here long before the virus started. Do you think we didn't prepare to kill a Superman? Guards. But the guards don't respond to Penguin. The Penguin then says Superman should be writhing in remote-control kryptonite-induced pain by now. At which point the soldiers tell Penguin, I'm not hurting Superman. And another one says, yeah, what do you think we are? Clearly, this not only pisses off the Penguin, it also terrifies him. Then on the next page, we see both Penguin and Simon Stagg being choked by something. Batman even says, what's happening? What's wrong with them? Superman answers saying, above us. As we see, it's John Constantine doing this, with narration telling us it was always part of Constantine's plan. Ragman's cloak was fueled by corrupted souls, and John knew just where to find the most corrupted souls still on Earth. Politicians, business leaders, crime bosses, and billionaires all had to put a plan in place to survive an apocalypse by putting themselves first. The narcissists, the cruel, the greedy, they were all absorbed to give Constantine one last power boost before he faced Trigon. Superman then flies up to Constantine saying, what are you doing? He then takes off his helmet of fate saying, okay, it's okay. The cloak only targets truly evil. If they're in here, they deserve to be. They're staying here until they've answered for their sins. It's about justice. I think your old man would have approved. I need to do this to deal with a certain doom out there, but I've got it covered, okay? Superman says, you want to be more specific? John Constantine answers saying, I'm going to take on a demon who will otherwise destroy the planet. Superman being Superman, of course, asks, can I help? Constantine tells him, no. Honestly, I wish you could, but I've seen the future. And you don't make it. So don't worry about it. I'll save the world. You save everyone on it. And as Constantine flies away, Superman says, you're a good man, John Constantine. To which he replies, I'm really not, but I'm not gonna lie, it's nice to hear Superman say that. Just like that, Constantine left to do the unthinkable. And after this, Batman and Superman go inside the Australian bunker to see that the Penguin had killed Professor Ivo. He did so after the launch of the Amazos because of a power struggle between the two of them. Batman then is essentially like, crap, well, we're not gonna get much out of Ivo now. But before Superman and Batman leave, Superman thanks the soldiers saying, I wanted to thank you for not doing whatever Cobblepot wanted you to do to me. It takes a hero to say no to the people in power when they're wrong. After this, Superman and Batman grab an Amazo head and take it back to Magnus Labs. When they arrive, Cyborg asks if they were able to take out the Amazos. Superman says, we ran into trouble. We're gonna need your help. Batman then jumps in saying, I think we crack open this Amazo head and work out how they transmit to each other. And then we use that to infect all their systems. Cyborg is like, are you suggesting we give the Amazo army a virus? Damian's like, I realize you're probably over viruses by now, but yes, that's exactly what I'm suggesting. Shortly after this, the race for humanity begins as the two fastest beings on the planet, Superman and the Flash, start making their way across the world, injecting people with the cure for the anti-life equation. Meanwhile, Constantine finally shows up in Paris to help Zatanna and the Phantom Stranger fight Trigon. As Constantine helps Z up, she says, John, you came. He tells her, of course I did. Just had to get a little more prepared. Now, if you're up for it, I just need two things from you. I need you to hold this for a little later, and I need you to tell me I could do this. And with that, Constantine starts facing off against Trigon, saying, okay, as much as I enjoy seeing Stranger trodden on, let him up. As Trigon is literally stepping on him. Trigon says, ha, John Constantine, you've collected some toys. Do you have any idea of the eternity of torment waiting for you in hell? John says, I have some inkling. Yeah. Trigon goes on to say, the demons you have angered, the pain you will endure, the never-ending nightmare that will, and Constantine interrupts saying, oh, shut up. And with the speed of Mercury, Constantine hit with the power of Zeus, with the strength of Hercules, and enhanced by all the force imbued by the Lords of Order, and with hundreds of angry cursed souls behind the blow. As the comic says, in short, John decked a freaking demon. Anyway, Constantine continues to fight Trigon. As the comic says, he chose his blows with a combination of the wisdom of Solomon and the dirty tricks he learned over a lifetime of avoiding fights. With Madame Xanadu's crystal ball in hand, John could see the future, so he could stay a fraction in front of Trigon's attacks. He used everything he had. He ascended other dimensions. He called on imprisoned souls and ancient gods. It wasn't enough. As we see Trigon punch Constantine into the ground, killing him. Yes, John Constantine, powered by Dr. Fate, Shazam, Ragman's cloak, Madame Xanadu's crystal ball, still wasn't enough to defeat Trigon. Trigon was still able to pull out the win with a single punch. If that's not a testament to how powerful this particular version of Trigon is, I don't even know. Anyway, Trigon then tells Constantine, I'll see you in hell, magician. I look forward to making you pay for your little tricks here. At which point, Zatanna runs over crying over John Constantine's body, and before John dies, he says, bye, Z. Zatanna then continues to narrate the comic because if you didn't know, she's been the one narrating this whole time, and she says, there was a moment of utter despair when I knew we lost. When I knew we had no future. As we see the Amazos around the world finally getting the upper hand on the Justice League. But she continues to say, I should have had more faith, because our heroes had always found a way. As we see Batman, Cyborg, and Swamp Thing figure out a way to put the virus into the Amazo army, with the Amazo head Batman and Superman brought back. And just like that, the Amazo army was defeated and destroyed. But while the Amazos fell, there was still a demon scorching the earth. But then he showed up. The man of mother freaking steel. Superman then flies right up to Trigon's face saying, stop. Trigon then looks at him in the eye saying, I just killed a being connected to the most powerful magics in the universe. You are a speck. Superman then looks right back at him and says, and this speck says, stop. At which point Superman flies full force right into Trigon's chest, as Zatanna tells us that Superman was faster than fate, stronger than the inevitable, able to leap the divide between reality and the impossible. And for one shining moment, a mortal man held back the devil. At which point Trigon says, how the hell? These are the reasons why I love Superman so much, because in the face of absolute defeat, he finds a way to keep going. And this isn't even Clark Kent's Superman. This is his son. But clearly the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. It's so good to see a son carry on the ideals and never say die attitude of his father. It's such a good passing of the torch and one that makes complete and total sense. Anyway, as Zatanna looks on, Ghost Constantine appears next to her saying, he's impressive, isn't he? She then looks at him saying, John? He says, yep, I'm a dead man. It sucks. But this was the plan. I wasn't just being a bloody bastard when I took Boston Brand's power. All that magic I stole, I'm still connected to it. It's still coursing through my soul. Z then says, what are you saying? He tells her, I'm saying I'm the most powerful dead thing ever seen, meaning I have the power to do this. As Constantine flies right inside of Trigon's head, you see John had taken Dead Man's power, the power to control a being. Alone, that power wouldn't have been enough to take over Trigon, but with everything else John was connected to when he died, he was able to fight for command. If he had a choice, John would have found a way to live forever. But as far as last acts go, turning an ancient malevolent evil into a personal puppet was very on brand for John Constantine. As we see Trigon shrink with Constantine now in control of his body. He then tells Zatanna, Z, I'll take that spear now. He then uses the spear to stab Trigon and himself right through the chest, saying, this is destiny. Zatanna tells us John Constantine was never big on sacrifices. He sacrificed others for the greater good, but he always avoided being that guy. But when the world needed him to be the guy, he said screw it and did the hard thing, sacrificing himself for the world. As Constantine's now pure soul walks out of Trigon's body, Superman says, John. Constantine replies, it's okay. My soul was set for an eternity of torment. Just disappearing? Well, that's gonna make a lot of demons in hell very, very annoyed. I'll tell you what, I'll miss all of this. And as he fades away, he says, see ya, Z. And now without a ridiculous number of imminent threats, the Justice League starts slowing down and finish curing the rest of the world. They were able to cure 2 billion people, including friends, leaders, and family. So many they had lost were found again. And the comic ends with Oliver Queen being cured, saying, pretty bird, I thought I died. And Green Canary with tears in her eyes say, I made you a promise, Ollie. I brought you back. We brought them all back. As we see them kiss and the heroes look at a cured world. And just like that, my friends, DCeased Dead Planet comes to an end. So let's not waste any time and jump right in with DCeased War of the Undead Gods Issue 1. Issue 1 starts off in the past on Krypton, specifically the city of Kandor, as we see Kara-El, aka Supergirl, being rushed to a rocket ship by her parents to get to safety as Kandor is currently being attacked by Brainiac and Krypton will blow up soon after. She tells her parents, "I don't want to leave you," but her dad says, "And we don't want you to leave us either, Kara, but this is all that's left." Her mom then says, "Knowing you're safe, we can face what's to come. We could face Brainiac. He will take Kandor. And Krypton will be gone soon after." Her mother then hugs her saying, "But we do not end here. You carry the best parts of us within you. Live for us, Kara. Live for all of us." We then see her rocket away from Krypton as it blows up, with captions from her parents continuing to say, "It will take many years for you to reach your new home, daughter, but you will sleep on your voyage. Krypton will be long gone. To you, it will seem like no time has passed. We have searched throughout the universe and we found a planet. When you reach this world, you will have incredible abilities. But you will not be alone in this. There will be others on this world with fantastic powers. You will be special but not apart." As we see her land on this new world approaching the civilization, saying, "Hello." Captions from her parents continue to say, "We are sending you to New Genesis. Jor-El would send his son to live with the primitive. We are sending you to live with gods, malevolent gods devoted to peace. This is not just survival, this is more. This is how we show our love for you, Kara. This future is the greatest gift we could give you." Which, as we see, is extremely ironic considering New Genesis has been infected by the anti-life equation, with zombie versions of the new gods attacking Kara as soon as she lands, inevitably catching her, infecting her with the anti-life equation as she screams in pain. The issue then gives us a brief recap of the heroes and villains lost over the 5 years that have passed since the anti-life equation infected Earth. But then came the cure, curing such heroes as Green Arrow, who was previously infected. We are then brought back to the new DC Trinity consisting of John Kent Superman, Damian Wayne Batman, and Wonder Girl. We see Damian tell John, "I could come with you." He replies, "It's space, Damian." Damian then tells him, "I'm Batman." With John saying, "I'm going to the center of the sun." Damian says once more, "I'm Batman," which is hilarious. Long story short, we find out that the strongest heroes still left are on a mission to the sun to retrieve Superman and inject him with the cure, who's been feeding on the heart of the sun for 5 long years. So John Kent goes to retrieve his father so they can cure him, while Cassandra Cain, who now possesses the power of Shazam, Cyborg, Green Canary, Wonder Girl, and Mary Marvel stand watch as backup. John is able to lure his dad out, at which point Green Canary uses the greatest weapon in the universe to hold the unloving Man of Steel. But he shattered it like glass, at which point all the heroes work together to restrain him as Cyborg injects him with the cure. We are then taken to Earth 2, where all the heroes of Earth 1 have made their new home after the anti-life equation ravaged their Earth. We see John Stewart and Guy Gardner Green Lantern talking to Lois, the president of Earth 2, as a boom tube opens up, with John Stewart panicking, saying, "We're under attack. All Lanterns and the Justice League members, report." But they see it's their friends and fellow members of the Justice League as Damian Wayne Batman, John Kent Superman, and Cyborg start walking out, with Damian saying, "It's just us." And well, as Clark Kent Superman walks out greeting his wife Lois Lane, saying, "Madam President." He's even got a new cybernetic arm, as Wonder Woman chopped off his arm when he was infected. Lois breaks down in tears, running to him, saying, "Smallville?" As Superman's father, Jonathan Kent, also walks out, having been cured, hugging his son Clark and reuniting with his wife Martha. After Mr. Miracle and Big Barda bring the heroes here to reunite, Mr. Miracle says, "Well, it's time we return to New Genesis. Jacob has waited long enough. I don't know when we'll be back." And for those of you curious, Jacob is Mr. Miracle and Big Barda's son. And with that, they boom tube back to New Genesis. Meanwhile, Alfred walks away saddened after seeing families reunite, saying, "Excuse me." Damian then walks over to him, saying, "You couldn't have known." And Alfred tells him, "Master Grayson, Tim, Bruce." Damian then says, "Even Bruce didn't know. You did what you had to at the time." Alfred replies with tears in his eyes, "Do not try to absolve me of this. They could have been saved. I pulled the trigger 3 times. I killed my sons." This is actually extremely sad and gut-wrenching, as Alfred is saddened and pissed at himself for shooting Grayson, Tim, and Bruce, killing them, because if he didn't kill them and somehow was able to restrain them somewhere, they could have used the cure on all 3 of them and cured them. Anyway, the next day we see Brainiac's probes approach Earth 2, and before Jessica Cruz's ring could even finish sounding the alarm, John and Clark were already engaging. And by the time the rest of Earth 2's Green Lanterns arrived, the Superman had already torn the probes to pieces. We then see Guy Gardner say, "Seriously? You didn't want to save any for us?" Jessica then speaks up and says, "Guy, his probe saw us. He won't be far behind. Brainiac will be coming." And she was right. Brainiac's ship arrived hours later. Clark and John go inside to check it out, only to see that Brainiac no longer is a threat, as he's missing his legs and his right arm. We then see a devastated Brainiac hanging there, saying, "We have to stop them. The gods are dead. But still they come, Kal-El. They will poison the universe. The dead gods will end everything." Now, at the beginning of DCeased War of the Undead Gods issue 2, we see Mr. Miracle and Big Barda returning to their home world of New Genesis, like they said they were in issue 1. And they're both extremely nervous to see their son Jacob after not seeing him for 5 years. The comic says the 2 gods stepped through a boom tube, ready to see their son again in paradise. But the home of the new gods was paradise no more. The celestial city had fallen, their home gone. family, friends. But Barda only had one thought in that moment: Jacob, where is he? As she screams with tears. Barda then sees a black and red boom tube that opens and starts to go through it. But Scott, aka Mr. Miracle, tells her, wait, we have no idea what's happened to that boom tube or where it leads. She says Jacob could be through that. I'm going in, Scott, but a voice then says, stop, you cannot. As we see the Black Racer, the god of death, tackle her away from the portal. As she looks at her hand, which has now been reduced to a skeleton. Black Racer says, she is a god, she will heal. Scott then asks, what is that? What the hell happened here, Black Racer? He answers, Darkseid. Scott says, Darkseid is dead. Black Racer tells him, yes, unliving Darkseid struck. All that weren't killed are now agents of the anti-life. The mother boxes have been infected with the anti-life virus just as the new gods have been. And now only the dead or unliving can pass through the doom tubes. Barda asks, where do the doom tubes lead? Where is unliving Darkseid? As the next page shows us that Darkseid is attacking the home world of Sinestro, which was the home to 7 billion people. His homeworld then sends out a distress call saying, we are under attack. The entire planet. We're dying. Sinestro and his Yellow Lantern Corps get the distress call, and of course he heads there to save his planet. As Sinestro says, I will not let my planet die. As captions in the comics say, a threat to us all turned enemies into allies. It made for some very unlikely partnerships, as we're brought back to Earth where Brainiac is trying to convince Superman, Batman, Guy Gardner, and Lois Lane that he wants to work with them to defeat the Undead Gods. Even offered him the bottled city of Kandor, the last surviving city of Krypton, saying, I understand your hesitation and distrust. I offer you this as a show of good faith. Batman asks, and why are you willing to give this up, Brainiac? He replies, I collect knowledge. If the universe dies, knowledge dies with it. As Superman, holding the city of Kandor, staring at it, says, we are facing the end of all life. I will do anything to stop that from happening. I will do whatever I can to protect the spark in this universe. Brainiac then says, with every wasted word we speak here, the anti-life spreads and more life slips into darkness. The odds of you saving existence, and Superman finishes his sentence saying, are irrelevant. We will reach out to every ally we have in the universe. We will fight back, basically reluctantly agreeing to work with him. Meanwhile, Sinestro and his Corps attack Darkseid with a caption saying they targeted every unliving god on the planet and unleashed. But their blasts never hit the planet, as we see Kyle Rayner and his wife Sornik Natu, who is also a Green Lantern and Sinestro's daughter, stop their blasts thinking they were attacking his home world. And as they're arguing with Sinestro, the comic says, and then came something neither Green Lantern nor Yellow Lantern could possibly have foreseen, a Kryptonian. As we see an infected Supergirl knock out Kyle Rayner while flying past him and using a mother box to infect Warworld with the anti-life, killing several Yellow Lanterns in the process. At this point, Darkseid comes up to join the battle, with Sinestro telling his daughter, don't hold back, use everything, we have to destroy him. But Supergirl comes flying in yet again, disrupting their attack, at which point Darkseid grabs Sinestro by the head and rips it off after Sinestro screams to his daughter, run. Please, I need you to live, daughter, please, so you can free my home world. But wait, it gets better. With Sinestro dead, his ring starts looking for a new wielder, and it finds it in Darkseid, flying to him saying, you have the ability to instill great fear. At which point Darkseid puts it on saying, everything fears the end of life, becoming an unliving Yellow Lantern Darkseid with Supergirl right next to him. Issue 3 starts off 2 months in the past on the planet Rann, 25 trillion miles from Earth. Captions tell us that Rann and Thanagar had been at war for generations, and that the Thanagarian soldiers were disciplined, well-trained, ruthless, and attacked from the sky. They would have taken the planet years ago if not for Rand's protector, a man from Earth named Adam Strange. Strange had been brought to Rann by a Zeta beam. He fought for his adopted world, and he fought for his family, as we see him fighting off the Thanagarian soldiers, saving his son and wife. As he hugs his son after saving him, a caption says, the problem was that the Zeta beam that moved him between worlds was not under his control, and tended to wear off at the worst times. As he starts to fade away back to Earth, leaving his wife and son unprotected, while under attack by the soldiers of Thanagar, he gets teleported back to Gotham, where he says, computer, find date and place for the next scheduled Zeta beam. As he flies over Gotham, he sees Wonder Woman, a fellow hero, so he screams, Diana, but when she comes for him, he realizes something's wrong with her as she's been infected. She then proceeds to slash at his chest, infecting him too. The comic then jumps to 2 weeks later on Rann, where we see it's been taken over by the Thanagarian soldiers, and Strange's wife and child are being held captive. But all of a sudden, one of the soldiers gets shot, and his wife and son see it's Strange, but a zombie version of him, as he proceeds to go after and kill them as his son screams, Dad. As a caption says, Adam Strange returns to his family, and the threat spreads further across the universe, as he clearly infected his family and then the Thanagarian soldiers. We are then brought to the Rylix system days later, where someone is recruiting soldiers saying, greetings, the entire universe is in peril. I am looking for fearless, noble warriors. This is perhaps the greatest cause of all time. Someone holding a martini asks, what does it pay? The man replies, I'm looking for someone noble. You clearly do not fit that description. Then everyone behind this man is like, oh crap, what did this guy just say? Basically scared for this man. As on the next page, we see it's Lobo who grabs him by the collar asking, how would you describe the main man, you weedy little bastich? That's right, Lobo has finally entered the DCeased continuity, as he he's holding this man by the collar, infected Thanagarian soldiers come crashing in, killing and infecting everyone in the bar. Lobo says, "What the frag?" and then grabs one of them by the neck, saying, "The guy you just killed poured my drinks." The soldier slashes Lobo across the chest, but to his shock, it does nothing. Lobo doesn't get infected, he doesn't turn. The soldier even says, "You do not turn." Lobo replies, "Oh, I can turn," as he twists the guy's head off of his shoulders. How crazy is that? Lobo is unaffected by the virus. That's definitely coming into play again. Anyway, he then steals the soldier's wings to fly up to their ship that's releasing all the soldiers and says, "Frag you," while flying right through it, destroying it. Yup, Lobo soloed the entire Thanagarian army. The man who was recruiting noble soldiers then stands up in the fire and wreckage saying, "You are a great warrior," to which Lobo responds, "No crap. Do you want Lobo to save the universe? Let's talk turkey." Okay, so back at Themyscira, we see a funeral being held for Diana, aka Wonder Woman. We also see Ares, the god of war, attend the funeral, but he assures the Amazons that he is not there to ruin the funeral. He is simply there to warn Green Arrow, Green Canary, and the other heroes that are there that a war is coming that cannot be won. The final war. It will be glorious, but ultimately futile. I will stay to watch the end, but every race in the universe will die. They ask, "How can you be so certain of our failure?" He tells them, "Because this has all happened before. This is how the entire universe was infected." As he shows Green Arrow in a book. Green Arrow says, "Okay, but this is a historical record, right? So how did we beat it last time?" Ares answers, "We didn't. This is a record from a universe that was lost." At this point, Green Canary's lantern ring goes off saying, "This is a priority alert for all Green Lanterns." Ares says, "It begins." The Guardians of the Universe start telling all the Green Lanterns all Green Lantern Corps are to return to Oa for a briefing immediately. Gather any and all allies. This is a universal threat. As Guy Gardner says to Batman and Superman, "Road trip?" The Guardians continue to say the anti-life virus is spreading across the stars. Green Arrow then says, "Is that the threat? We've got this. We found a cure. We've already fought and won against the anti-life equation." Ares says, "You're not fighting an equation. Darkseid, he's a new god. He's a child, a powerful pawn for something much larger. He had no idea what he was playing with when he merged the anti-life with death, what he has unleashed, what has turned its gaze towards us. This is no equation. This is older than numbers, older than gods. This universe will die. Erebos is here." Now, this is a brand new character for the DC universe, but in Greek mythology, Erebos is the personification of darkness and one of the primordial deities. Needless to say, this entity is going to be a massive threat when it shows up. But this brings us to issue 4, where we see a flashback of Alfred being forced to kill Nightwing, Tim Drake, and Bruce as they were infected. He then falls to his knees saying, "My boys," but Bruce opens his eyes asking, "Why?" Then Tim stands up saying, "Why did you kill us?" with Nightwing saying, "We didn't have to die, father." But we then see it's a nightmare as Leslie Thompson wakes Alfred up from bed. We find out that Alfred and Leslie Thompson are now dating, which is kind of awesome. And Leslie, being a doctor, tells Alfred, "As your girlfriend and your doctor, I'm telling you, you need to find a way to forgive yourself or that anger will consume you." As Alfred deeply blames himself for not being able to save his boys. There's a knock on the door, and when they open it, they see it's Damien. Damien says he's surprised to see Leslie still there. She tries to make up an excuse to why she's still there, but he just says, "Living with Alfred by the looks of it. I mean, you could try to make up a lie, but..." And she finishes the sentence saying, "You are the greatest detective on Earth." And I assume that carries over to this Earth too, as they're all living on Earth 2 now. We learn that Damien is there to say goodbye to Alfred as he and several other heroes have a meeting with the Guardians on Oa, planning on how to fight the anti-life virus. Alfred begs for Damien not to go, saying he's lost too many sons, but Damien says the anti-life virus is spreading across the universe, Alfred. Nowhere is safe. We have to stop this. I have to stop this. Alfred then says there's too much of your father in you, with Damien replying, "Thank you." Alfred tells him, "I want to stand with you. Find me a way." Damien asks, "How could I?" Alfred tells him, "A weapon, a power ring. I want to fight. I don't want to sit uselessly on the sides." John Kent arrives to tell Damien, "We have to go." But Damien puts on his cowl, telling Alfred, "You have never sat uselessly on the sidelines, Alfred. Nothing our family has achieved would be possible without you. Do you want to battle undead gods with me?" Alfred answers, "I do." At which point Damien says, "There's too much of my father in you too," with Alfred telling him, "Thank you." John, Damien, Superman, and several other heroes then head to Oa for their meeting with the Guardians. Meanwhile, we see the planet Almerac has also been invaded by the anti-life virus, which turned New Genesis gods known as the Forever People. Yellow Lantern Darkseid even shows up along with Supergirl and several other new gods to wreck shop. Back on Oa, the Guardians tell the heroes that have gathered, the threat is growing. If the virus isn't dealt with, if the spread isn't halted now, the anti-life equation will be beyond containment. 12 planets have already been destroyed. Over 100 billion lives have been lost. Another 7 planets, with species clearly seen as assets by the anti-life equation, have been infected. We are sanctioning lethal force. These infected worlds must be wiped away. But obviously our heroes, specifically Superman, aren't down with that, as Superman tells the Guardians Guardians, I will not allow you to destroy entire worlds, Ganthet. He replies, you would stand against us, Kryptonian? At which point Cassandra Cain, Mary Marvel, and several of the heroes say, you will not be alone. At this point, the Guardians try to trap Superman in a Green Lantern construct bubble, but Superman just punches Ganthet in the face through the construct, knocking him to the floor. With Guy Gardner saying, one punch. He knocked out a freaking Guardian with one punch, which is a callback to the time Batman one-punched Guy Gardner all the way back in the Justice League International title, and I love it. Anyway, several of the heroes then start fighting the Green Lanterns before Damian realizes that Ares is there and he's the one who's kind of instigating this war, as that's what he does. With Damian looking at Ares telling his fellow heroes, we're not in control of the situation. He then points to Ares saying, you're manipulating us, God of War. He responds, I just gave you a little nudge. Damian says, stop this. A voice then says, you should listen to the little Batman, Ares. I won't let you hurt Superman. As we see, it's Mixia Spitlick, with the caption saying a fifth dimensional imp in a bowler hat. It seemed ludicrous, but it was the beginning of the end, as the comic comes to a close. Dude, I can't believe Mixia Spitlick has entered the building, because that dude is incredibly powerful. Also, issue 3 revealed that Lobo cannot be infected. So it looks like Lobo and Mixia Spitlick are going to be key players in the mission to save the universe from the anti-life equation. Issue 5 opens up on Earth 2, where Black Racer, Big Barda, and Mr. Miracle boom tube in. Lois Lane says, Scott, Barda? Barda responds, we'll have our son soon, Lois. Where is everyone? Where is Superman? We are then brought to Oa, where we pick up where we left off last issue with Mixia Spitlick and Ares, a reality warping being facing a god of war. You see, Mixia Spitlick didn't like that Ares was manipulating heroes, specifically Superman, as he's the only one who's allowed to mess with Superman, so now he's at odds with Ares. Ares says, you think you can command me, imp? He replies, I think I can do a lot more than just command you. We see even the Guardians of the Universe are too scared to step in between both cosmic powered beings. But the Kryptonians, Superman and his son, do not hesitate to break the two up. Superman then tells the Guardians, we will be taking the cure to the infected planets. If the Green Lantern Corps wants to stand beside Undead Gods against us, then so be it. Your opposition will not stop us from saving worlds from the anti-life equation. Green Canary then says, Darkseid has allowed something to leach into this universe, something called Erebos, with Wonder Girl adding, it's not just an equation. One of the Guardians then says, Erebos? Superman asks, you know this name? The Guardian replies, we do. We thought we were dealing with a virus. If Erebos is at the heart of this, then it changes everything. The core cannot be used to wipe away infected planets. All Green Lanterns are to stand on Oa. The central power battery must be protected at all costs. Damian Wayne Batman says, Guardians, you monitor the universe. Can you show us where the spread is? Show us what the front lines look like. The Guardian says, the front lines are everywhere. The new gods and the other spacefaring species have spread the virus across galaxies, as they show that Kilowog's planet is the one that the Undead Armada are currently striking. John Stewart puts his hand on Kilowog's shoulder saying, I'm sorry, as Kilowog leaves to help his planet. The Guardian says, if Erebos is at the heart of this, we must call a meeting of the Quintessence. No Green Lantern is to face the anti-living before the Quintessence has spoken, telling Guy Gardner his duty is here. It's at this point Mixia Spitlick says, it's okay, Superman, I'll handle Darkseid. It'll be a great team up. Ares says, you think you could defeat Darkseid? Mixia Spitlick replies, sure. I mean, I won't really need to fight him. I'll probably just turn him into a tasteful flower arrangement. Because remember, people sleep on Mixia Spitlick. Dude can literally alter reality. At this point, Superman's son John says, I'm coming with you, but Soup says, no, I need you to stay here and protect Ma, Pa, and Lois, as well as all of Earth 2. You're the only one I trust. At this point, Superman, Mixia Spitlick, and Kilowog set off to stop Darkseid and his army from destroying Kilowog's planet. But when they arrive, they see it's not just the three of them. Nope, John Stewart and the rest of the Green Lantern Corps followed, saying, you're not alone, Kilowog. The heroes then go down to the planet and start fighting the undead, but an infected Supergirl knocks Superman to the ground, allowing the undead Yellow Lantern Darkseid to hit him with his yellow Omega beams. At this point, Mixia Spitlick intervenes, saying, okay, that's enough of that, new god. What should I turn you into? Houseplant? Persuasive essay? But Mixia Spitlick got too cocky, as the caption says, all Mixia Spitlick had to do was think and Darkseid would have been done, but he didn't have time to think, as Darkseid just shows him a mother box corrupted with the anti-life equation, instantly infecting Mixia Spitlick just by looking at it. Captions then continue to say Mixia Spitlick was no doubt confident that he couldn't be harmed, but he could still see it. And all it took was a corrupted mother box to show him the equation for a creature many considered to be a joke to become the greatest threat in the anti-life equation army. See what I'm saying? The comic straight up told us that now that Mixia Spitlick has been infected, he's the greatest threat in the anti-life equation army. Hell, even before he got infected, if he wouldn't have looked at the damn mother box that was infected with the anti-life equation, he could have just turned Darkseid into flowers, like he said. Again, people like to think of Mxyzptlk as a joke, but there's a reason why he's such a great threat to Superman and pretty much everyone else in the DC universe. Guy can alter reality with a thought. He's a fifth dimensional imp. He's the definition of great things come in small packages. At this point, Mxyzptlk makes himself huge and starts wrecking shop, destroying Kilowog's planet. The Green Lanterns try to stop him as John Stewart and Kilowog get up close and personal. But this allows Mxyzptlk to catch them in his hand. They quickly put a Green Lantern force field around them, but it doesn't matter. Mxyzptlk is way too powerful for them as he literally crushes them inside of their Green Lantern force field bubble, with John saying to Kilowog, "You're my friend in brightest day and blackest night," before they're crushed like blueberries. After this, Mxyzptlk decides to finish the job and flies right through Kilowog's planet, destroying it, flying all the way to Oa, destroying the Green Lantern's central power battery. And with it, every Green Lantern was severed from their power. It also exposed the Green Lantern Corps to gravity and the vacuum of space. But before the Green Lanterns could suffocate and die in space, the Spectre, the wrath of the presence, the god of DC Universe, says, "I have to intervene." So he flies to Oa and restores the central power battery for the Green Lanterns, saving them and squaring off against Mxyzptlk, saying, "I am the spirit of vengeance, and I am very, very pissed off." And with that, issue 5 ends, so let's jump into issue 6. Issue 6 starts off with Lobo being persuaded by an alien race to save the entire universe, as we learned in previous issues that he can't be infected by the anti-life equation. Lobo asks, "What's in it for the main man?" They tell him, "It's your universe too, Lobo. If it's destroyed, you will be as well." Lobo replies, "Maybe. How much are you willing to pay?" They say, "Whatever you want will be yours." Lobo then uses some choice words, and they tell him, "In return for the universe's survival, we'll provide 100 years of hedonism and excess." Lobo says, "I don't know, could get boring." They then say, "We'll ensure it does not get boring. Our greatest minds will turn their vast intellect to an onslaught of creative scenarios for your personal gratification." I don't know if you guys are catching on, but the scientists are going to be turning their greatest intellects to certain pleasurable scenarios for Lobo, at which point he's like, "Fine." He then adds, "I'll save the stupid universe," as he rides off on his space chopper, saying, "Time to hunt the dead." Elsewhere, we see Superman and Kyle Rayner mourn the loss of their friends and fellow heroes, John Stewart and Kilowog. We are then brought back to the fight between Spectre and Mxyzptlk. As captions of the book basically say, their battle and power was so great, it was tearing reality apart around them. Black holes were punched in space, planets, stars were sucked into oblivion. That's right, this is a battle like none other. The book straight up says they're punching black holes in space. Planets, stars were being sucked into oblivion. What even is that? You have the wrath of God versus a fifth dimensional imp, a true battle of titans. We then see the Green Lantern Corps try to tip the scales as they throw restraints around Mxyzptlk's arm, but the book tells us all of those brave warriors able to overcome great fear to face a fifth dimensional horror were like gnats. As we see Mxyzptlk crush them in his hand like gnats. Meanwhile, on Earth 2, we see the Undead Army arrive invading, trying to infect the planet. At which point, John Kent, Green Canary, Cyborg, and the rest of the heroes get to work to fight them off. But in the ensuing battle, Leslie Tompkins, Alfred's now girlfriend, is infected by Adam Strange. Captions then tell us what transpired that day may have begun decades earlier, but the catalyst was Leslie Tompkins. Now, if you weren't aware, these narrations are actually Alfred, so Alfred is straight up telling us, though his loss has started decades earlier, Leslie's death was the straw that broke the camel's back. We are then brought back to the fight between Spectre and Mxyzptlk, and Mxyzptlk tells Vengeance, "It's time for your end." But Superman, being Superman, comes flying in, punching the imp right across the face, giving Spectre the opening he needed to stab Mxyzptlk right through the stomach, killing him with the caption saying, "The Spectre used that opening created by Superman to strike the fatal blow." Spectre then says, "If you could hear me in there, you will not win, Erebos. The heart of the universe will keep beating." But he just says no, as Mxyzptlk reaches his hand into Spectre's chest and pulls out Jim Corrigan, tearing the host from wrath, killing Corrigan in the process, at which point the wrath of the presence was untethered and drifted away. Yeah, man, it seems like just when you think the heroes are gonna win, something worse happens. Meanwhile, on Earth 2, the heroes are getting their butts handed to them, but Damian Wayne, not wanting to give up, uses smoke bombs to punch the unliving Highfather straight across the face. But he just retaliates and punches Damian so hard, the sound of the hit is sickening to others. At this point, Alfred snaps and stands up to Highfather of the New Gods. As a caption of him says, "I didn't even realize I moved. All I knew was there was a scream I contained when that little boy lost his parents in an alley so long ago. The scream I held in as I ended the lives of 3 men I loved. A scream of defiance, of grief, but mostly of fury. And in that moment, I heard an echo of my anger across the cosmos. There was a harmony of rage." And in the middle of that scream, a bloody Damian gets up saying, "Alfred," and on the final page of the issue, we see Alfred has become the new spirit of vengeance, with him saying, "This is the spirit of vengeance and the rage of a man. You will not take another son from me." As he ends a god, punching Highfather right through the head, killing him. And with that, the issue ends. Issue 7 then opens up with the uninfected heroes having their last stand against the anti-living on Earth 2. We even see Lobo finally enter the mix, putting his metal hook right through an infected light ray. Elsewhere on Earth 2, we see Big Barda and Mr. Miracle fighting off an infected Adam Strange. But Mr. Miracle is distracted, saying, "Barda, stop," as they see their son Jacob, who is now also infected. Mr. Miracle's hesitation costs him his life as his son Jacob jumps on him, putting his fist right through his father's chest. Elsewhere, we see Alfred, who again is now Spectre, has just killed the infected Highfather. He did this because Highfather was going to kill Damian Wayne in the last issue. As Highfather falls to the ground, Alfred says, "It's all right, Damian, you're safe." Damian just looks at him with a bloody face and says, "No, I'm not," as we realize Damian has been infected by Highfather. Damian says, grabbing his head, "I can feel it in my head. I can't stop it." Cassie Wonder Woman then comes over saying, "Damian." He tells her, "I'm so sorry, Cassie. I tried, but it's not too late." "Alfred." Cassie asks, "Alfred, that's you?" He replies, "No and yes." As Damian says to Alfred, "I know you're gonna want to tear them apart, Alfred. You want to destroy, but you have the power to save." As Damian screams out in pain, clawing his face, slowly becoming one of the anti-living. Alfred narrates, "Seeing the loss of our loved ones could have defeated us. Instead, our heroes' resolve grew. They fought harder. I think Erebos could sense it, since the heroes of Earth 2 were life's greatest hope, because in that moment, the anti-living received reinforcements." As we see a Doom Tube open up with the anti-living Darkseid Yellow Lantern, Supergirl, and freaking World. Spectre, or Alfred, says as he looks at the reinforcements arrive, "Every part of me wanted to fight, to punish, to decimate everything anti-life had infected, because he is now the wrath of God." Alfred continues to say, but Damian's last words were correct. You have the power to save. So Alfred tells Cassie Wonder Woman, "Keep them at bay as best you can until I return." She's all like, "Return? Where are you going? We need you." He says, "No, there's somewhere else I need to be," as he flies off-world. Meanwhile, with the reinforcements on Earth 2, things are looking worse than ever. So John Kent Superman goes to try to hold off Yellow Lantern Darkseid. To his surprise, he's being helped by Brainiac, who says, "Hold him, Kryptonian," with Alfred narrating, saying perhaps the 9th level intellect calculated a chance, a possibility that almighty Darkseid could be overcome if Brainiac works side by side with the powerful son of his nemesis. But there are some eventualities that no intelligence could predict, as Darkseid is able to grab hold of Brainiac and infect him by touching his head. The comic tells us that as Brainiac's operating system was taken over by the anti-life equation, he did not attack the heroes, nor did he attack Earth 2. His focus was elsewhere. Brainiac had destroyed hundreds of planets, but with each planet he ended, he abducted and shrank a city and its people to preserve the knowledge of that world. Erebos had him return to the ship to spread death and destroy all of the stolen cities. Every city would have fallen if not for Cyborg. Cyborg comes in to stop him from destroying all the captured cities on Brainiac's ship, and then tells Brainiac, or more specifically Erebos, "We know your name. We know what you are. If you can hear me, Erebos, the cities are under my protection." The infected Brainiac then tries to hack Cyborg by piercing his chest with one of his tentacles. But Cyborg says, "I can feel you lurking, testing my firewall." And all I could say is, that is a very bad move, because now I know you can't control me. You can't infect me, but I can infect Brainiac. I can control him. I can take his technology, his knowledge. Brainiac is mine now. As Cyborg takes over Brainiac, essentially becoming the new Brainiac. Now let's pause for a second, because Cyborg becoming Brainiac is an insane hybrid. Cyborg is already one of the most dangerous characters, considering he can hack into all human and alien tech. Then you give him the power of Brainiac, a 9th level intelligence? That's just crazy. This instantly makes Cyborg one of the most threatening characters in DC. This version of him, at least. But we return to the story to find John Kent fighting Darkseid. As we see him fleeing, he tells Green Canary and Mary Marvel, "Keep fighting," as a Shazam-possessed Cass Kane kicks Darkseid in the face, hoping to hold him off. We see that John Kent only fled the fight because he sensed an energy blast from Warworld that was going to destroy Earth 2. He puts himself in front of it, stopping and deflecting it. But as his bruised and broken body falls back to Earth 2 after successfully stopping the blast, we see 1,000 Kryptonians rise to fight the anti-living. We learn that Cyborg, who is now Brainiac, freed the bottled city of Kandor, giving our heroes an army of Kryptonians to combat the anti-living. We also see Alfred return back to Earth 2 and see that he left to go retrieve the cure for the anti-living that was made by Earth's heroes earlier in the DCeased storyline. So of course they heal Damian and several other Earth's heroes and even villains, as they took a vote and voted to cure and save Darkseid, a decision of course Superman was for. Once cured, Darkseid finds out that he was made a pawn. He says, "My vengeance will be terrible," as the issue ends. newlyweds. And this brings us to the 8th and final issue. We see that with a cure brought to Earth by Alfred Pennyworth Spectre, that it was a time for unlikely reunions. We see a cure Jacob reunite with Big Barda, his mother, who he thought to be dead, and his father, Mr. Miracle. We also see Supergirl reunite with her parents as she finds out that Cyborg, with the power of Brainiac, is the one who freed them. After we get some nice reunions, we see Damian approaching Death, aka Black Racer, saying, "I want to ask you something." Racer says, "I do not sense your approach, Damian Wayne. Few can surprise Death," speaking to the stealth abilities of Damian as he was able to sneak up on the new god of death. Black Racer then asks, "What do you want from me?" Damian says, "My father and my brothers taught me to respect all life. Before I was Batman, before I was Robin, I was an assassin. I was raised to look for weaknesses. I've been thinking about how to take this fight to the source." Erebos is a primordial deity. It is the personification of darkness. The only thing that can destroy the dark is light. Erebos is anti-life, and I have an idea. I want you to tell me if it'll work. I want you to confirm that I can end this being. After talking with Black Racer, Damian goes to Cyborg saying, "I've been talking to Death." He replies, "That's quite a sentence." Damian says, "I ran something by him. He thinks it could work. Erebos is the source of anti-life. And I think the answer to stopping him is in you." As he holds up a USB drive, Cyborg asks, "What is that?" Damian and Cyborg then gather all the heroes and villains, telling them, "Thank you all for coming. We believe we could take on the source of all of this. We believe we could take this fight to Erebos. As they say, there's a problem. Erebos exists in limbo, outside of our universe. We need to travel through a doom tube to reach him. The problem is you need to be dead to travel through a doom tube." But we learn that Cyborg and Damian are working on a solution to that problem. Cyborg says, "Once we can get into limbo, Batman and I believe we have a weapon that can end Erebos. But to ensure the deity doesn't escape, we will need to be inside the being when we unleash it. Meanwhile, they're going to need several powerful heroes to create a crack big enough for several heroes and Warworld to fit inside." Before their mission, John Kent Superman gives Damian a brand new white batsuit saying, "I thought the personification of darkness could come up against the light tonight. You don't have to wear it if," but Damian holds it up saying, "No, this feels right. Thanks." We then see the solution that Cyborg came up with to get the heroes through the Doom Tube is to create a machine that will stop their hearts for 1 minute, temporarily killing them, allowing them to pass through a Doom Tube and into limbo. Once activated, they're all electrocuted and temporarily killed, allowing them and Warworld to pass into limbo, where Black Racer says, "We're here." We have reached Erebos as we see him for the first time in the series, and man does he look terrifying and huge. He's like a Kraken Cthulhu hybrid thing. Ares and Black Racer then distract Erebos while several other heroes like Superman, John Kent, Mary Marvel, Green Canary, Yellow Lantern, and Darkseid blast him with the power of Shazam, the heat vision of 2 Kryptonians, the Omega beams of Darkseid, and Green Lantern's light. Lobo then goes in with his hook and space bike to hold open the crack they just made as Cyborg and Damian Wayne Batman drive Warworld right through it. Once inside, Cyborg says, "Okay, it's time to unleash the weapon." "Wait, I don't know what it is." "The weapon. It's like it's been removed." "Damian, what have you done to me?" He replies, "I'm sorry, Bruce was a paranoid man and you were bonded to apocalyptic technology. He didn't just hide a tracker on you, he hacked your entire system years ago, and he left control with me. I had a theory. The anti-life virus leapt out of your mind. I needed the opposite, and I found it in you. I found the life equation. I extracted it, and I erased it all from your system. Now it only exists in me." As Cyborg and the readers realize that Damian's whole plan was a suicide mission. He extracted the life equation from Cyborg and put it in himself, and is now going to detonate it from inside Erebos to kill him from the inside out. He stole it from Cyborg because he knew Cyborg or any of the other heroes would not agree to this. With full control of Cyborg, Damian then programs him on a flight path out of Erebos. When Cyborg tells the other heroes what Damian's real plan is, they are obviously devastated and mad at the same time, except for Darkseid, who says, "Tell the child this is most impressive." As Damian waits to go off like a giant light bomb that will create a new universe, Alfred, aka Spectre, asks John Kent, Damian's best friend, if he'd like to be with him in his final moments, as Spectre is fast enough to get them out in time. Of course, John agrees, and once inside, Damian says, "You can't save me, John." John replies, "I get that. I just thought I'd sit here, so you're not alone." Damian says, "If I told you what I was doing, you would have never let me go through with it." John says, "No, I wouldn't. You were a great Batman." As tears fall from John's eyes, Damian begins to explode, with Spectre able to get John out of there in time. We then see Erebos explode from the inside out, as Alfred says, "I lost my last son. Damian Wayne was born an assassin. He was taught to kill. He was taught not to care for life. But he fought everything he was taught, and he saved all life." As we see Damian's closest friends and even love interest Cassie Wonder Woman mourn when Cyborg and John give them the news. Spectre flies through the cosmos saying, "I visit sometimes the cosmos Damian made. I glide past its new suns, and I walk over its cooling planets. I had no idea how much a parent could sacrifice for a child. Not until I had my own did I understand understand what I would give up for them, what I would do if any harm came to them, how deeply I could miss them, my bats, my sons, my whole universe. As Alfred looks up at the cosmos Damien made that is in the shape of a bat symbol, as the DCeased series comes to an end. Guys, this has been a hell of a ride. The series started in 2019, and every single spin-off series in this DCeased universe has been absolutely amazing. And what an ending. Talk about character development and coming full circle for Damian Wayne, a kid who was taught to be an assassin, taught to kill, and in the end makes the ultimate sacrifice by giving his life for the universe, showing us and John that he was a fantastic Batman. Tom Taylor, that's how you wrap up an awesome story, with Alfred looking at the cosmos that is in the shape of a bat saying, my bats, my sons, my whole universe. Now it's your turn. Let us know what your thoughts are on the DCeased series and which of the miniseries was your favorite down in the comments. Otherwise, we'll see you next time when we talk about all things comics.